At the family gathering, my mother-in-law threw red wine in my face and my sister-in-law laughed and said, "Thanks, Mom. Maybe this will teach her a lesson in respect, you filthy pig." I felt my hands grip the chair until my knuckles turned white. I stood up without saying a word and walked to the bathroom to make a single phone call. They thought I was a broke delivery driver who was lucky to marry into their prestigious family. They had no idea they were insulting the woman who secretly owned the deed to their house and the company that signed their paychecks. True story. Before I tell you how I evicted my entire family in one night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone exactly who you are. My name is Amara, and at 32 years old, I have learned that silence is the most expensive thing you can buy. For the last 3 years, I have played a role. To my husband Marcus and his family, I am just a struggling gig worker picking up shifts, delivering packages and groceries, trying to make ends meet. To the rest of the business world, I am the founder and CEO of AMR Logistics, one of the largest transportation networks in the Southeast. I kept my identity hidden because I wanted to be loved for me, not for my net worth. I wanted to believe that Marcus loved me for my heart, and that his family would eventually accept me because of my character. I was wrong. This was supposed to be a celebration. It was the 40th wedding anniversary of my in-laws Otis and Bernice. Their estate in Buckhead, Atlanta was a testament to old money, or at least the appearance of it. The driveway was lined with imported Italian cypress trees, and the front pillars were high enough to make you feel small before you even stepped inside. Inside, the air smelled of expensive lilies and judgment. I was wearing a white silk dress. It was simple, elegant, and cost more than Bernice's entire living room set, but because it did not have a flashy designer logo plastered across the chest, they assumed it was cheap. I sat at the long mahogany dining table surrounded by the people who made it their daily mission to remind me that I did not belong. Bernice sat at the head of the table like a queen on her throne. She was a woman who believed that zip codes determined human value. She wore a gold sequined gown that was far too tight and far too bright, but no one dared tell her. She spent the first hour of the dinner bragging about her lineage and her connections in the Atlanta socialite scene. To her right sat my sister-in-law, Brittany. Brittany was 28 and the wife of my husband's younger brother, Terrence. She was the definition of a nightmare wrapped in a designer scarf. Brittany was white and came from a family that Bernice deemed acceptable because her father owned a chain of car dealerships. She never missed a chance to make me feel like the help. And then there was Marcus, my husband, sitting next to me. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, but his posture was slumped. He was 34 years old, but in this house he was still a terrified little boy, desperate for his mother's approval. The trouble started with the soup course. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Bernice had been watching me eat like a hawk, waiting for a mistake. She criticized the way I held my napkin. She made a comment about my hair being too natural and untamed for a formal event. I took it all in silence, just like I always did. I did it for Marcus. I did it to keep the peace. But then came the main course. The servers brought out plates of roasted lamb, and Bernice poured herself another glass of heavy, expensive Cabernet Sauvignon. She was already 3 glasses deep, and her cheeks were flushed with wine and malice. So Amara Bernice said, her voice loud enough to stop all other conversations at the table. "Marcus tells us you are still driving that beat-up delivery van. When are you going to get a real job?" I lowered my fork slowly. "My job pays the bills, Bernice," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Honest work is nothing to be ashamed of." "Honest work?" she scoffed. "It is embarrassing work. Do you know what I told the neighbors when they asked who Marcus married? I told them you were a consultant. I had to lie, Amara, because the truth is too humiliating. You are dragging my son down. Look at Brittany. She helps Terrence run his business. She is a partner. You are just a burden." I felt Marcus shift beside me. I waited for him to defend me. I waited for him to say that I worked hard, that I supported him when he was between jobs, that I was a good wife. But he said nothing. He just stared at his plate, pushing peas around with his fork. I reached for my water glass, my hand shaking slightly from the effort of holding back my anger. As I lifted the glass, my elbow bumped the silver soup spoon sitting on the edge of my saucer. It clattered onto the table. It was a small sound, a tiny mistake, but in that silent dining room it sounded like a gunshot. Clumsy Bernice shrieked. She stood up so fast her chair scraped violently against the hardwood floor. "You are so clumsy and useless. You cannot even eat dinner without making a mess. Look at this table. This is antique mahogany." "It is just a spoon, Bernice," I said, trying to keep my composure. "I did not spill anything." "You are ruining this night," she yelled, her eyes wild. "You ruin everything you touch because you do not know how to act in a civilized home. You are trash, Amara. Gutter trash that Marcus picked up because he was too weak to find a woman of his own status." That was it. The line had been crossed. I stood up ready to leave. "I am not going to sit here and be insulted," I said firmly. "Marcus, we are leaving." I turned to my husband, expecting him to stand with me, but he stayed seated, looking up at his mother with fear in his eyes. "Sit down, Amara," he whispered, pulling at my hand. "Just apologize to Mom so we can finish dinner. Please do not make a scene." "Apologize?" I asked, my voice rising. "For dropping a spoon?" Bernice let out a cold, cruel laugh. "She does not need to apologize, Marcus. She needs to be taught a lesson. She thinks she can come into my house, eat my food, and look down on me with that arrogance. I see the way you look at me, Amara. You think you are better than us." She reached for her wine glass. It was full to the brim with dark red liquid. Before I could process what was happening, she pulled her arm back and threw the contents of the glass directly into my face. The shock was instant. The wine was cold and stung my eyes. I gasped as the liquid soaked into my hair, dripped down my chin, and stained the front of my white silk dress, a deep, violent crimson. I stood there frozen, the taste of tannins and humiliation in my mouth. The room went dead silent. For a second, no one moved. I wiped the wine from my eyes, blinking to clear my vision. I looked at Marcus. He was not looking at me. He was looking at the Persian rug beneath my feet. "Mom," he said, his voice full of panic. "That wine is going to stain the rug. That is a $20,000 rug." He grabbed his napkin and dropped to his knees at my feet, dabbing frantically at the droplets of wine that had fallen on the floor. He was scrubbing the carpet while his wife stood above him, dripping wet and humiliated. He did not ask if I was okay. He did not yell at his mother. He cared more about the floor than he cared about me. Then the laughter started. It began as a giggle and erupted into a cackle. I looked across the table. Brittany was laughing so hard she had to hold her stomach. "Oh my God," Brittany gasped, wiping a tear from her eye. "Good shot, Mom. That was perfect. Look at her. She looks like a wet rat." She picked up her phone and snapped a picture of me, the flash blinding me for a second. "This is going on Instagram," she said. Hashtag trash takes itself out." Bernice was smiling a satisfied, smug smile. "Maybe that will teach you some respect," she said, sitting back down and smoothing her dress. "Now go clean yourself up in the kitchen sink. Do not use the guest bathroom towels. I do not want red wine on my Egyptian cotton. And when you come back, you will apologize to me for making me do that." "You are a filthy pig," Amara Brittany added, taking a sip of her own wine. "A filthy pig in a cheap dress. You should thank Bernice. That wine is probably worth more than your entire wardrobe." I felt a coldness settle over me. It started in my chest and spread to my fingertips, numbing the anger, numbing the hurt. This was not just a bad family dinner. This was the end. I looked at Marcus, still on his knees, scrubbing the rug like a servant. I looked at Bernice, preening in her sequined dress. I looked at Brittany, scrolling through filters for her photo. They saw a helpless woman. They saw a victim. They had no idea they had just declared war on the wrong person. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. I did not cry. I simply reached up and wiped a drip of wine from my cheek. "I am going to the restroom," I said. My voice was steady, so calm it sounded like it belonged to someone else. Bernice waved her hand dismissively. Go. And be quick about it. We are serving dessert in 10 minutes, and you need to help the maids clear the table. I turned and walked out of the dining room. My heels clicked rhythmically on the marble floor of the hallway. I passed the family portraits hanging on the wall, photos of Marcus and Terrence and Brittany, smiling vacations in Aspen and summers in the Hamptons. I was in none of them. I had never been welcome. I walked into the powder room near the foyer and locked the door behind me. The silence of the small room was deafening. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was matted with wine. My white dress was ruined, a map of red stains spreading across my chest. I looked like I had been in a war zone. I took a deep breath and reached into my purse. I pulled out my phone. My hands were not shaking. I scrolled through my contacts past Marcus, past the bakery, past the emergency numbers, until I found the contact simply labeled Sterling. Mr. Sterling was not just a lawyer. He was the head of legal counsel for AMR Logistics. He was a shark in a three-piece suit, a man I paid a very high retainer to handle problems that money and power could fix. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Vance Sterling, said, his voice crisp and professional. It is late. Is everything all right? No, Sterling, I said, staring at my reflection. Everything is not all right. Do you have the file on the Buckhead property? There was a pause and the sound of typing. The Henderson estate at 404 Paces Ferry Road. Yes, ma'am. We hold the deed. Your company purchased the distressed mortgage note from the bank 6 months ago when they defaulted. You instructed us to hold off on the foreclosure proceedings because it was your in-laws' residence. That has changed, I said. Ma. Sterling asked, his tone shifting from professional to alert. Initiate the foreclosure, I said. Activate the immediate eviction clause. They are 180 days past due. Under Georgia law, since we own the note and the property title, we have the right to secure the asset if we believe it is being damaged or devalued. Are you sure? Mrs. Vance Sterling asked. Once we start this, there is no going back. The sheriff will be involved. It will be aggressive. I looked down at my wine-soaked dress. I thought about Marcus on his knees scrubbing the rug. I thought about Bernice's laugh. They damaged the asset, Sterling. I said, cold as ice. They just spilled red wine all over the property. I want them out. Tonight. Tonight, Sterling repeated. Tonight, I confirmed. Call the sheriff. Tell him the owner is on site and is requesting immediate assistance to remove squatters who are damaging the property, and Sterling, bring the full security team. I want this done by the book, but I want it done loud. Understood, ma'am, Sterling said. We are 20 minutes away. I hung up the phone and placed it back in my purse. I grabbed a hand towel and dipped it in warm water, wiping the wine from my face and neck. I could not save the dress, but I could save my dignity. I took one last look in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was not Amara the delivery driver. She was Amara the CEO, Amara the landlord, and she was about to fire her tenants. I unlocked the bathroom door and walked back toward the dining room. I could hear them laughing inside, the clinking of silverware against china. They were enjoying their dessert. They were enjoying their victory. They thought the show was over. They did not know the main event was just about to begin. I walked back into the room, my head held high. Bernice looked up, a forkful of cake halfway to her mouth. You took long enough, she snapped. Well, do not just stand there. Grab a tray. The help is busy in the kitchen. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table, the one opposite Bernice, and sat down. I did not grab a tray. I grabbed my wine glass, which had been refilled, and took a slow, deliberate sip. I am not clearing the table, Bernice, I said. But you might want to finish that cake quickly. You are going to need the energy for packing. Excuse me, Bernice said, dropping her fork. You heard me, I said, locking eyes with her. You have about 20 minutes. 20 minutes for what Marcus asked, looking nervous. 20 minutes until the police get here, I said. Brittany laughed. Did you call the cops on us, Amara? For what? Spilling wine. They are going to laugh in your face. No, I said. I did not call them for the wine. I called them for the trespassing. The room went silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of confusion of predators who suddenly realized they might be the prey. "What are you talking about?" Bernice asked, her voice trembling slightly. "This is my house." "Is it?" I asked, leaning forward. "Are you sure about that, Bernice? Because I seem to recall you stopped paying the mortgage 6 months ago. I seem to recall the bank sold the note. And I seem to recall that the new owner is not very patient with tenants who destroy the property." "How do you know that?" Bernice whispered, her face turning pale. "We never told anyone. I know a lot of things I said." I checked my watch. 19 minutes. Marcus looked at me, his eyes wide. "Amara, what did you do?" "You." "I did what you should have done years ago, Marcus," I said. I stood up for myself. And then we waited. The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder and louder, coming closer to the gates of the estate. The party was over. The eviction was just beginning. I walked back into the dining room, and the silence that greeted me was heavy enough to crush bones. The air was thick with the scent of roasted lamb and expensive perfume, but underneath it all was the metallic tang of fear mixed with confusion. They had expected me to run. They had expected me to flee to my car crying and humiliated, leaving them to finish their meal in peace. They had expected the old Amara, the one who kept her head down and swallowed every insult like a bitter pill. But that woman was gone, washed away in the bathroom sink along with the wine stains on my face. I moved to my chair with a calmness that unsettled them. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor, a steady, rhythmic sound that seemed to echo too loudly in the quiet room. I could feel their eyes on me. Bernice looked offended, as if my mere presence was a personal insult to her interior design. Brittany looked disappointed that her little show had not resulted in my immediate departure. And Marcus looked terrified. He was still holding his napkin nervously, twisting the fabric between his fingers, his eyes darting between me and his mother, like a trapped animal, waiting for the predator to strike. I sat down. I did not smooth my dress. I did not try to hide the massive red stain that now bloomed across my chest like a wound. I simply sat there, folded my hands on the table, and looked directly at Bernice. "You have a lot of nerve coming back in here," Bernice said, her voice dripping with disdain. She picked up her wine glass, swirling the dark liquid, taunting me with it. "Look at you. You look like a disaster. You are ruining the aesthetic of my anniversary dinner." "I'm just finishing my meal, Bernice," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. "I believe there is still cake." Bernice let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Cake," she repeated. "You think you deserve cake after the scene you just caused? You disrupted my toast. You stained my rug. And now you sit there looking like a beggar who wandered in off the street. You are ruining the mood, Amara. You are a dark cloud over this family." I picked up my fork. The metal felt cool and solid in my hand. "I did not cause a scene." "Bernice," I said without looking up. I dropped a spoon. "You were the one who decided to throw a drink. If the mood is ruined, you should perhaps look in the mirror." The table gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. No one spoke to Bernice like that. Not her husband Otis, who was currently pretending to be very interested in the centerpiece. Not her sons, and certainly not me. Bernice's face turned a shade of purple that clashed with her gold dress. "Excuse me," she hissed. "You heard me," I said, finally looking up to meet her gaze. "You will apologize to me right now," Bernice demanded, slamming her hand onto the table. "You will apologize for your clumsiness. You will apologize for your disrespect. And you will apologize for existing in my space." I looked at Marcus, waiting. This was his chance. This was the moment where he could redeem himself, where he could finally be a man and tell his mother that she had gone too far. But he just looked down at his lap, his shoulders hunched. "Mom, maybe we should just move on," Marcus mumbled, his voice barely audible. "Shut up, Marcus," Bernice snapped. "She is going to apologize." I felt a cold smile tug at the corners of my mouth. It was not a smile of amusement, but of finality. I am not apologizing, I said. In fact, I think we should talk about apologies. We should talk about gratitude. Gratitude? Bernice scoffed. What on earth do I have to be grateful to you for? You bring nothing to this table, Amara. You bring poverty. You bring embarrassment. You are a leech. A leech, I repeated slowly, tasting the word. That is interesting, because I seem to remember a different conversation we had last year. I seem to remember a phone call at 3 in the morning when Otis collapsed. Otis looked up, then his eyes wide and pleading. He shook his head slightly, a silent beg for me to stop, but I was past the point of mercy. I seem to remember the insurance company denying the claim for his heart surgery. I continued, my eyes locked on Bernice. They said it was a pre-existing condition. They said it would cost $85,000 out of pocket. Do you remember that, Bernice? Bernice stiffened. Her eyes darted around the table, checking to see if the guests were listening. We handled that, she said quickly. We took care of family business. You did not have $85,000, I said, my voice rising just enough to carry over her denials. You were broke, Bernice. You had already leveraged the house to pay for Brittany's failed boutique. You had maxed out your credit cards keeping up this charade of wealth. You were crying in the hospital waiting room, terrified that Otis was going to die because you could not pay the deposit. Stop it, Bernice hissed. Stop talking. And then suddenly the money appeared, I said, ignoring her. It was a miracle, was it not? An anonymous donor paid the bill in full. The surgery went ahead. Otis lived. And you went right back to treating me like garbage. Bernice's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Marcus, then back at me. You? She whispered. It was you. I leaned forward. Yes, Bernice. It was me. That gig worker money you despise so much paid for the heart that is beating in your husband's chest right now. I saved him. I saved this family from bankruptcy and grief, and I did it without asking for a thank you. I did it because that is what family does. For a moment, I thought I saw shame in her eyes. For a split second, the mask slipped, and I saw the fear and the gratitude that she had buried deep down. But then it was gone, replaced by a defensive sneer that was uglier than before. So what? Bernice spat, regaining her composure. You paid a bill. Do you want a medal? Do you want me to bow down to you because you scraped together some cash? I want respect, I said. I want you to acknowledge that I am more than just the woman your son settled for. Bernice laughed, a cruel, harsh sound that grated on my nerves. Respect, she mocked. You think money buys respect. You think paying for a surgery makes you one of us. You are deluded. That was your duty, Amara. My duty? I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Yes, your duty, Bernice said, leaning back in her chair and crossing her arms. You have been married to my son for 3 years, and what do you have to show for it? Nothing. No children, no heir. You are a barren vessel, Amara. You cannot give this family a legacy, so the least you could do is open your wallet. Paying that bill was the rent you pay for occupying space in my son's life, since you cannot do the one thing a wife is supposed to do. The words hit me like physical blows. Barren, rent, duty. It was a low blow even for her. She knew about our fertility struggles. She knew how many nights I had cried myself to sleep, how many negative tests I had hidden in the trash. She took my deepest pain and turned it into a transaction. I looked at Marcus again. He was pale, his face drained of color. He knew how much I wanted to be a mother. He knew how much those words hurt. Mom, that is not fair, Marcus said, his voice trembling. It is the truth, Bernice snapped. She bought her way in because she could not breed her way in. That is the reality. So no, Amara, I will not apologize to you. You did what was expected of a defective wife. I sat there, and the coldness inside me turned to ice. There was no going back from this. There was no reconciliation. There was only the nuclear option. I checked my watch. Sterling and the police were 10 minutes away. I could endure 10 more minutes. I would let them dig their graves a little deeper. I see, I said simply. I understand your position perfectly, Bernice. Brittany, who had been watching this exchange with glee, decided it was her turn to twist the knife. She had been drinking steadily throughout the argument, and her eyes were glassy with malice. You know, Amara. Brittany slurred, leaning over the table. Bernice is right. It is kind of sad, really. All that money you say you have, and you cannot even buy a baby. Maybe God knows you would be a terrible mother. Maybe that is why he kept your womb empty. Because he did not want to inflict you on an innocent child. That was the breaking point. The rage flared up hot and blinding, but I pushed it down, forcing it into a tight ball in my chest. I would not scream. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I looked at Brittany. She was wearing a diamond necklace that sparkled in the chandelier light. It was a vintage piece, delicate and beautiful. It was the necklace Marcus's grandmother, Big Mama, had promised to me on her deathbed. I recognized the setting instantly. Bernice had told me it was lost. She had told me it had been misplaced during the funeral arrangements. And here it was, hanging around the neck of the woman who was calling me defective. That is a lovely necklace, Brittany. I said, my voice deadly calm. Brittany touched the diamonds, smiling smugly. Isn't it? She cooed. Bernice gave it to me. She said it belonged to the women in the family who actually matter. It is a family heirloom. It is for the mothers. She thinks she won. She thinks she is untouchable because she has Bernice's favor. She reached for the gravy boat. It was a heavy silver vessel filled with thick, dark brown juice for the lamb. Oops, Brittany said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. She tipped the boat. It was not an accident. She looked me dead in the eye as she poured the hot, greasy gravy toward me. She wanted to ruin the rest of my dress. She wanted to cover me in filth to make the outside match what she thought of me on the inside. My reflexes were faster than she expected. Years of working in logistics of moving boxes and dodging forklifts had made me quick. Before the gravy could hit my lap, my hand shot out. I caught her wrist mid-air. My grip was iron. I squeezed hard, digging my fingers into her soft, pampered skin. Brittany gasped, dropping the gravy boat. It clattered onto the table, spilling its contents all over the pristine white tablecloth and splashing onto her own expensive dress. Let go of me! Brittany shrieked, trying to pull her arm back. You are hurting me. I did not let go. I leaned in close, my face inches from hers. The room had gone silent again, but this time it was terrified silence. You listen to me, you little parasite? I whispered, my voice low and menacing. You made a mistake, I said, tightening my grip until she whimpered. You thought I was weak because I was quiet. You thought I was safe to bully because I wanted your approval. But you need to understand something, Brittany. I am not the help. I am not the victim. Amara let her go. Marcus yelled, standing up. What are you doing? I ignored him. I kept my eyes locked on Brittany's terrified face. Careful with that hand, Brittany, I said. You need to be very careful. Because if you ever try to pour anything on me again, if you ever insult me again, you are going to lose more than just a necklace. You will not have a hand left to wear those diamonds on. I shoved her arm back toward her hard enough that she stumbled in her chair. She clutched her wrist, tears springing to her eyes. She looked at Bernice, expecting her protector to jump in. Bernice stood up, her face twisted in fury. Get out, she screamed. Get out of my house, you violent animal. I will call the police. I stood up slowly, smoothing my ruined dress. I picked up my napkin and wiped a spot of gravy from my hand. You do not need to call the police, Bernice, I said, checking my watch again. Why not? Bernice demanded, her chest heaving. Because I already did, I said. And they are here. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. It was a long, authoritative ring. It was followed by the heavy thud of a fist pounding on the front door. Open up, came a deep voice from outside, amplified by the foyer's acoustics. Sheriff's Department. We have a warrant to execute. The blood drained from Bernice's face. She looked at the door, then back at me. What did you do? She whispered. I picked up my wine glass and took one last sip. I finished what you started. I walked past them toward the front door, my head held high. The time for talking was over. The time for consequences had arrived. They followed me confused and frightened, like sheep being led to the slaughter. I opened the heavy oak door, and the flashing blue lights from the police cruisers flooded the driveway, illuminating the terror in their eyes. Mr. Sterling stood on the porch, flanked by the sheriff and 4 deputies. He held a leather portfolio in his hand. He looked past Bernice, past Marcus, past Brittany, and locked eyes with me. "Good evening, Madam Chairwoman." Sterling said, his voice crisp and clear in the night air. "We are ready to proceed with the eviction." The look on Bernice's face was worth every penny I paid him. She looked at the police, then at Sterling, then at me. "Chairwoman," she stammered. "Yes," I said, stepping out onto the porch. "It is time for you to meet the real me." I had been so focused on the wine stain and Marcus's lies that I had not looked closely at her accessories. But now, as the chandelier light hit the stones around her neck, my heart stopped beating for a full second. The blood rushed in my ears, drowning out the ambient chatter of the party. It was a necklace of intricate design, 3 strands of freshwater pearls held together by a centerpiece of filigree gold encrusted with old mine-cut diamonds. It was heavy, it was ancient, and it was unmistakable. It was Big Mama's necklace. Big Mama was Otis's mother, a woman of steel and grace, who had been the only person in this entire family to treat me with kindness. When I first started dating Marcus, she was the one who pulled me aside and told me I had a good spirit. When Bernice made fun of my delivery uniform, Big Mama had told her to hush, saying that a woman who works for her own bread tastes the sweetness of life. When she passed away 2 years ago, she had left a specific codicil in her will. She had a jewelry box of trinkets she left to Bernice, but the necklace, the piece she wore every Easter Sunday, the piece her own mother had saved from the fires of the past, that was left to me. But when the will was read, the necklace was missing, gone. Bernice had wept crocodile tears, telling the executor that Big Mama must have misplaced it in her dementia. She said it was lost to time. I had grieved for that necklace, not for its value, but because it was the physical weight of Big Mama's love. And now it was hanging around the neck of a woman who had just called me a pig. I stood up. The movement was so abrupt that my chair scraped loudly against the floor. Marcus reached for my arm, but I shook him off. I walked around the table, my eyes fixed on Brittany's throat. I felt like a wolf closing in on a gazelle. Brittany saw me coming and smiled a wide, vacuous smile. She thought I was coming to admire her. She thought I was finally bowing to her superiority. "Do you like it, Amara?" she asked, running her fingernail over the pearls. "It is stunning, is it not? Bernice gave it to me tonight as a welcome to the Inner Circle gift. She said it is a family heirloom." I stopped directly behind her chair. I leaned down so my voice was a low rumble in her ear. "Take it off," I said. Brittany laughed, a nervous tinkling sound. "Excuse me." I said, "Take it off, Brittany. That does not belong to you." Bernice stood up at the head of the table. "Amara, sit down. You are making a scene again. You are obsessed with ruining my night." I turned to look at Bernice. My rage was cold now, absolute and terrifying. "You told the lawyers it was lost," I said. "You told me Big Mama lost it in the nursing home. You filed a police report, Bernice. You filed an insurance claim for lost property." Bernice's face went pale, but she held her ground. She was used to rewriting history to suit her needs. "I found it," she lied, her voice shrill. "I found it in an old shoebox in the attic just last week. It was a miracle." "Then why is it on her neck?" I asked, pointing at Brittany. "Big Mama left that necklace to me. It is in the will. Item number 4, to my granddaughter in spirit. Amara, I leave my Sunday pearls so she may always walk with her head high." "That is what it said, Bernice." Bernice sneered. Her mask of civility dropped completely, revealing the ugly snobbery underneath. Big Mama was sick, Amara. Her mind was gone at the end. She did not know what she was doing. She was confused. She thought she was leaving it to family. I am family, I said. No, you are not, Bernice spat. You are a mistake my son made. You are a placeholder. Big Mama would never have wanted her most precious possession hanging around the neck of a delivery driver. It belongs on a woman of status. It belongs on a woman who knows how to wear it. Brittany has grace. Brittany has class. You have a uniform in a beat-up van. I looked at Brittany. She was clutching the necklace protectively, looking between me and Bernice like a child who had stolen a cookie and was waiting to see if she would get away with it. She did not care about the history. She did not care about Big Mama. She just liked that it was shiny and expensive. That necklace is worth $50,000, I said. Brittany's eyes widened. She looked down at her chest with renewed interest. Really, she breathed. Wow. Yes, wow, I said. And keeping it knowing it belongs to someone else is a felony, Brittany. It is called grand larceny, receiving stolen property. In the state of Georgia, that carries a sentence of up to 10 years in prison. Brittany dropped her hands from the necklace as if it had suddenly turned red hot. She looked at Bernice, panic rising in her eyes. Bernice, you said it was yours to give. You said it was a gift. It is a gift, Bernice snapped. Do not listen to her, Brittany. She is just jealous. She is trying to scare you because she knows she can never compete with you. She knows she will never be the daughter I wanted. I looked at Bernice, and for the first time I saw her clearly. She was not just mean, she was a criminal. She had stolen from a dead woman. She had stolen from me. And she had done it simply because she believed her own prejudices were more important than the law. You have 5 seconds, I said to Brittany. Take it off and put it on the table. Make me. Brittany challenged, emboldened by Bernice's defense. You are not the boss of me, Amara. You are nobody. You are just Marcus's broke wife who crashed a party she was barely invited to. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen glowed in the dim light. Mr. Sterling is waiting outside, I said. He is with the sheriff. Do you know what the sheriff does when he finds someone in possession of stolen goods worth 50 grand? He arrests them. He puts them in handcuffs in front of all their friends. He takes a mugshot where you are not wearing any makeup. Brittany froze. The threat of a bad photo was more terrifying to her than the threat of prison. Bernice laughed nervously. You are bluffing. You would not arrest family. I unlocked my phone. My thumb hovered over the messaging app. Try me, Bernice. You have stolen my dignity. You have stolen my peace, and now I find out you stole my inheritance. You think I have any mercy left for you? Marcus stood up from the table. Amara, please, he begged. Just let it go. It is just jewelry. Mom can buy you another one. We do not need the police involved. Just jewelry, I repeated, turning my gaze to my husband. That was the only thing Big Mama left me, Marcus. The only thing. And your mother stole it to give to a woman who just poured gravy on me. And you want me to let it go? Marcus looked down, unable to hold my gaze. He was pathetic. He knew it was wrong, but he was too afraid of his mother to do the right thing. I tapped out a message on my phone. It was short. It was precise. It was the final nail in their coffin. Add grand larceny to the warrant list. Possession of stolen goods. Value 50,000. Suspect is wearing the evidence. I hit send. I looked back at Brittany. You had your chance, I said softly. What did you do? Brittany whispered, her hand going to her throat again. I just updated the guest list for the county jail, I said. Bernice stormed over to me, her face twisted with hate. You are a demon. You are trying to destroy this family because you are miserable. You are jealous because Brittany is pregnant and you are barren. That is what this is, isn't it? You want to take her necklace because she is carrying the grandchild you could never give me. I froze. Pregnant? Brittany smiled, rubbing her flat stomach theatrically. That is right, Amara. We were going to announce it at dessert. I am expecting the next generation of the family, the heir. Bernice gave me the necklace as a celebration. It is for the mother of her grandchild, something you will never be. The room seemed to spin for a moment. Pregnant. That was why they were all fawning over her. That was why Bernice was practically worshipping the ground she walked on. Brittany, the golden girl, was giving them the one thing money couldn't buy. But then I looked closer. I looked at the glass of wine sitting in front of Brittany. It was empty. I looked at the champagne flute next to it. Also empty. I looked at her plate, which had remnants of soft cheese and cured meats. I looked at Brittany's eyes. They were dilated, slightly glassy. She was drunk. "You are pregnant?" I asked, my voice skeptical. "Yes," Brittany said, puffing out her chest. 6 weeks. "And you drank 4 glasses of wine tonight?" I asked. "And 2 glasses of champagne? And you ate unpasteurized brie?" Brittany blinked. "It is a celebration," she said defensively. "One night won't hurt." Bernice stepped in front of her like a shield. "Do not you dare judge her, Amara. She is under a lot of stress because of you. A little wine to calm her nerves is fine. You would not understand because you have never carried a life." I looked at Terrence, Brittany's husband. He was sitting quietly at the other end of the table, looking miserable. He had not said a word all night. He was staring at his wife with a look that was not love. It was suspicion. "Terrence," I called out, "congratulations. You must be thrilled." Terrence looked up. He looked at Brittany, then at me. He opened his mouth to speak, but Brittany cut him off. "He is overjoyed," she said quickly. "We all are. Now stop trying to change the subject, Amara. You are jealous, and you are petty." "I am not jealous," I said. "I am observant." "And I think you are lying." "Lying," Bernice shrieked. "How dare you?" "I think you are lying about the baby to get money," I said. "I think you are lying to get gifts. Like that necklace. And I think you are lying to keep Terrence from leaving you, because everyone knows he has been sleeping in the guest room for 3 months." The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of a secret being exposed to the light. Brittany's face went white. Terrence looked down at his hands. "That is a lie," Brittany screamed, her voice cracking. "We are happy. We are having a baby." "We will see," I said. "But right now, the only thing you are carrying is stolen property." I turned away from them and walked back to my seat. My phone buzzed in my hand. A reply from Sterling. "Understood, Madam Chairwoman. Deputies are entering the premises now." I sat down and smoothed my dress. I poured myself a fresh glass of water. "You might want to savor that necklace, Brittany," I said, without looking at her. "It is the last nice thing you are going to wear for a very long time." Bernice was shaking with rage. "I am going to ruin you, Amara. I am going to make sure you never work in this town again. I will call every friend I have. I will destroy your reputation." I looked at her calmly. "You do not have any friends, Bernice," I said. "You have hostages, and you cannot destroy a reputation you do not understand." The heavy thud of boots on the porch steps echoed through the house. The blue lights danced across the dining room walls, reflecting off the stolen diamonds on Brittany's neck. "They are here," I said. "Who?" Bernice asked, her voice trembling for the first time. "The consequences," I replied. The heavy front door closed with a finality that echoed through the foyer. The last of the high society guests had drifted away into the Atlanta night, their bellies full of lamb and their heads full of gossip. The mask of the perfect family dropped the instant the latch clicked. Otis turned the deadbolt. It was a sharp mechanical sound that signaled the end of the pageant and the beginning of the shakedown. We moved into the formal living room. It was a space designed for intimidation. The furniture was stiff and uncomfortable, upholstered in fabrics that cost more than a Honda Civic. Bernice kicked off her heels and collapsed onto a velvet sofa, letting out a groan that was half exhaustion and half irritation. She looked at me with eyes that had lost their party sparkle. They were dull now, and hard like old pennies. "Sit down, Amara," Bernice commanded, pointing to a low ottoman in the center of the room. It was the seat for a child or a servant, not a family member. I remained standing. I prefer to stand, Bernice, I said. I do not want to get wine on your velvet. Bernice rolled her eyes. Oh, stop playing the victim. You have ruined the night enough. Now we have serious matters to discuss. Matters that concern the survival of this family. I looked around the room. Brittany was slumped in an armchair picking at her nails. Terence was pacing by the fireplace looking like a caged tiger. Marcus was standing behind his mother, his hand resting on the back of the sofa, a loyal guard dog waiting for the command to attack. Otis went to the wet bar and poured himself a drink, his hands shaking slightly. We need $50,000, Bernice said. She said it flatly, without preamble, without emotion. It was not a request. It was an invoice. I raised an eyebrow. That is a lot of money, Bernice. I thought you were wealthy. I thought this house was paid off. I thought you were swimming in dividends. Bernice waved her hand dismissively. Liquidity issues, Amara. You would not understand high finance. Our assets are tied up. Investments, properties. We have a temporary cash flow problem. A cash flow problem, I repeated. Is that what you call it? Yes, Brittany chimed in, her voice shrill. It is just a bridge loan. We need to cover some expenses for the business. What business, Brittany? I asked. The boutique that closed 6 months ago, or Terrence's cryptocurrency venture that evaporated last week. Terrence stopped pacing and glared at me. You watch your mouth, Amara. You do not know anything about markets. It is a correction. It will bounce back. But we need capital to hold our positions. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to give you $50,000, me, the delivery driver, the embarrassment, the pig? Yes, Bernice said, sitting up straighter. Because despite your lack of pedigree, you are the only one with cash. We know how your job works, Amara. It is a cash business. Tips, off-the-books payments. You hoard it like a squirrel. You do not spend it on clothes, clearly. You do not spend it on your hair. You just pile it up in some sad little savings account. I almost laughed. They thought I had 50 grand in tip jars buried in my backyard. They had no concept of the scale of my wealth, but their greed was so blinding it distorted their reality. I do not have $50,000 lying around, Bernice. I lied. I pay bills, I pay rent, I pay for the food Marcus eats. Do not lie to me, Bernice snapped. We know you have it, Marcus told us. I looked at my husband. He shifted his weight, avoiding my eyes. He looked at the floor, then at the ceiling, anywhere but at me. Marcus, I said, my voice soft and dangerous. What did you tell them? Marcus swallowed hard. I told them about the rainy day fund, Amara. I saw the statement on the counter a few months ago. The one from the credit union. You had $75,000 in there. It was a small account I kept for household emergencies. A drop in the bucket compared to my corporate holdings. But to Marcus it was a fortune, and he had served it up to his mother on a silver platter. You went through my mail, I asked. We are married, Marcus said, his voice gaining a whine of defensiveness. What is yours is mine, Amara. That is how it works. You have been holding out on us. You let me stress about money, you let Mom stress about bills, and you were sitting on a pile of cash the whole time. It is selfish. Selfish, I said. I pay for everything, Marcus. I pay the rent, I pay the car note, I pay the insurance. You spend your paycheck on sneakers and video games, and I am the selfish one. It is for the family, Bernice interjected. We are in a crisis, Amara. A real crisis. What kind of crisis? I asked. Otis turned from the bar, his glass empty. We owe people, Amara, he said, his voice raspy. Not the bank. We handled the bank for now. We owe private investors. Private investors? I asked. You mean loan sharks, Otis? Otis flinched. Hard money lenders. They are aggressive. They want their interest payment by tomorrow morning. If they do not get it, they are going to start seizing assets, personal assets. They are going to take my car, Brittany wailed. My G-Wagon. Amara, you cannot let them take my car. It is my brand. I cannot be seen in an Uber. I looked at Brittany. She was wearing a stolen necklace and crying about a car she did not pay for. The absurdity was suffocating. "So let me understand this," I said. "You leveraged yourself to the hilt to buy things you cannot afford. You borrowed money from dangerous people to maintain an image. And now that the bill is due, you want me, the woman you just humiliated in front of half of Atlanta, to bail you out." "It is your duty," Bernice said. "You married into this family. You benefit from our name." "Your name?" I asked. "Your name is Mud Bernice. Your credit score is lower than your IQ. I do not benefit from your name. I survive it." "How dare you!" Bernice screamed, standing up. She looked ready to throw another glass of wine, but she had nothing left to throw. "You ungrateful little wretch! We took you in. We let you sit at our table." "You threw wine at me," I reminded her. "You called me a pig." "And you deserved it," she shouted. "Because you are holding out on us. You are watching us drown, and you are refusing to throw a rope. That is evil, Amara. That is pure evil." I looked at them. They were not family. They were parasites. They had drained me emotionally for 3 years, and now they wanted to drain me financially. They did not care about me. They only cared about what I could provide. "I am not giving you the money," I said. Marcus stepped toward me. He crossed the room in 3 strides, invading my personal space. He loomed over me, trying to use his height to intimidate me. It was a tactic he had learned from his mother. "You are going to give us that money, Amara," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You are going to go to the bank in the morning and you are going to wire it to Dad." "Or what, Marcus?" I asked, looking up at him without blinking. "Or we are done," he said. "I am serious, Amara. If you do not help this family, I cannot stay married to you. I cannot be with a woman who would let my mother suffer. I cannot be with someone so heartless." I looked at his face. It was the face of a stranger. There was no love there. There was only greed and fear. He was willing to end our marriage to save his mother's vanity. He was willing to extort his wife to keep his sister in a luxury car. "You are blackmailing me," I said. "I am leading my family," Marcus said, puffing out his chest. "I am doing what a man does. I am making the hard decisions. You have a secret fund, Amara. A slush fund. You have been hiding money from me for years. That is financial infidelity. You owe me this. You owe us." The room was silent, waiting for my answer. They thought they had me. They thought the threat of divorce would bring me to my knees. They thought I was desperate to keep Marcus, desperate to stay in their orbit. They did not know that I had already signed the divorce papers in my head the moment the wine hit my face. They did not know that the $50,000 was irrelevant because I owned the debt they were so terrified of. I had bought the note from the hard money lenders last week through a shell company. I was the shark. I was the one they owed. I looked at Marcus. I looked at the man I had vowed to love and cherish, and I felt nothing. The love had evaporated, leaving only a cold clarity. "You want the money?" I asked quietly. "Yes," Marcus said, stepping back, thinking he had won. "Yes, we want the money." "And if I give it to you," I asked, "will that be enough? Will you stop treating me like garbage? Will you respect me?" Bernice sat back down, smoothing her dress. "We can discuss your attitude later, Amara. If you do the right thing, we can move past this unfortunate evening. We can start fresh. But you have to pay your dues." "Pay my dues." I nodded slowly. "I tried to tell you earlier," I said. "I tried to warn you, but you would not listen." "What are you talking about?" Brittany asked, impatient. "Just give us the money, Amara. Stop being so dramatic." "I am not being dramatic," I said. "I am being realistic. I do not have to give you $50,000. Marcus grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into my flesh, painful and possessive. "Do not play games, Amara. You have the money. I know you do. Give it to us. Now." I looked at his hand on my arm. It was the second time tonight a member of this family had put their hands on me in anger. "Take your hand off me, Marcus," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Or what? He challenged, tightening his grip. You going to call the police again? I pulled my arm away with a sharp jerk. No, Marcus, I said. I am not going to call them again. Because they are already here. I walked to the window and pulled back the heavy velvet curtain. Outside, the driveway was bathed in blue and red light. The silent arrival I had requested had transformed into a spectacle. Look, I said, pointing out the window. Bernice stood up and walked to the window. She gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. What is that? She whispered. That is the eviction squad, I said. Marcus ran to the window. There were 3 squad cars and a black SUV parked in the circular drive. Men in uniforms were gathering on the porch. They are here for the neighbors, he said, his voice shaking. They must be. No, Marcus, I said, walking to the center of the room. They are here for you. The pounding on the door started again. It was louder this time, more insistent. It was the sound of reality crashing into their fantasy world. Open the door, Otis, Bernice screamed. Go see what they want. Tell them they have the wrong house. Otis did not move. He was staring at me. He was the only one who seemed to realize that something was terribly wrong with the math. Amara, he said, his voice trembling. Why are they here? I looked at him. I looked at the man who had let his wife bully me for 3 years. Because you did not pay the rent, Otis, I said. We do not pay rent, Bernice yelled. We own this house. Not anymore, I said. The door burst open. They had not waited for Otis to unlock it. The wood splintered with a loud crack that sounded like a gunshot. The police poured into the foyer, boots heavy on the marble. And behind them, calm and terrifying, walked Mr. Sterling. He walked into the living room, his eyes scanning the scene. He saw Marcus near the window. He saw Bernice clutching her pearls. He saw Brittany trying to hide behind a chair. And then he saw me. Madam Chairwoman, Sterling said, bowing his head slightly. The paperwork is executed. The property is secured. Bernice looked at Sterling, then at me. Chairwoman, she whispered. I smiled. It was the smile of the executioner. You wanted $50,000, I said. I have something better. I have a writ of possession. I turned to Marcus. You wanted me to save the family, I said. Well, I am. I am saving myself from you. Get out, I said. Get out of my house. So I said, leaning back against the velvet sofa, crossing my legs and looking at them with a feigned expression of concern, so you need $50,000 by tomorrow morning to pay off these private investors. That is a very specific number, Bernice. And it is a very urgent timeline. Bernice nodded eagerly, mistaking my interrogation for submission. Yes, exactly, Amara. It is a matter of life and death for our reputation. If we do not pay them, they will start seizing assets. They will come for the cars. They will come for the furniture. It would be a scandal we could never recover from. I tapped my chin thoughtfully. I understand the urgency, I said. But I am confused about one thing. You said this was for business expenses. You said it was a bridge loan to cover investment positions. But $50,000 feels like a consumer debt number. It feels like a purchase. Terrence shifted uncomfortably by the fireplace. He looked at Brittany, then at the floor. It is complex, Terrence muttered. It is a diversified portfolio of obligations. Diversified, I repeated. That is a big word, Terrence. Let us break it down. Because if I am going to drain my life savings, if I am going to empty the rainy day fund that Marcus so kindly told you about, I need to know exactly what I am paying for. I am an investor now, after all, and investors do due diligence. Bernice huffed impatiently. Does it matter, Amara? The money is needed. That is all you need to know. Stop trying to play detective and just write the check. It matters to me, I said, my voice hardening, because I work hard for my money. I drive a van for 10 hours a day. I lift boxes. My back hurts every night. So no, Bernice, I will not just write the check. Tell me where the money went. There was a long silence. They looked at each other, a silent communication of guilt passing between them. Finally, Brittany spoke up. It was for the brand, she said, her voice defensive. We needed to maintain the brand. The brand, I asked. You mean your failed boutique? No, Brittany snapped. The family brand. The image. Terrence needed a vehicle that reflected his status as a rising entrepreneur. He could not be seen driving that 3-year-old Lexus. It was embarrassing. It was hurting his networking potential. I looked at Terrence. He was sweating profusely now. A vehicle, I asked. What kind of vehicle, Terrence? Terrence cleared his throat. It is an investment, really. It holds its value. It is a Porsche Cayenne. Matte black, custom rims. I felt a laugh bubbling up inside me again, dark and incredulous. A Porsche. They were on the verge of bankruptcy, they were borrowing money from sharks, and they bought a luxury SUV because the Lexus was too old. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice dripping with disbelief. You stopped paying your debts so you could put a down payment on a Porsche. It was a lease, Terrence corrected quickly, as if that made it better. A very expensive lease. And the insurance. And the detailing. It adds up, Amara. You do not understand the pressure of maintaining an image in this town. You can drive around in a beat-up van because nobody expects anything from you. But us. We have standards. Standards, I said. You have delusions, Terrence. You bought a toy you could not afford to impress people who do not care about you. And now you want me, the woman you call trash, to pay for it. It is not just the car, Marcus interjected, trying to deflect the heat from his brother. There were investments, too. Amara, you know how the market is. High risk, high reward. I turned my gaze to my husband. And what did you invest in, Marcus? It wasn't me, it was the family, Marcus said, washing his hands of the responsibility. Terrence had a tip, a sure thing. Cryptocurrency. It was supposed to double in a month. We put everything we had into it. Everything, I asked. You mean the money for the mortgage? Bernice flinched. We did not use the mortgage money, she lied. We used savings. You do not have savings, Bernice, I said, cutting her off. I know you do not. I have seen the way you spend. You live paycheck to paycheck, just like the people you look down on. Only your paychecks are bigger, and your debts are astronomical. You took the mortgage money, didn't you? You took the money meant for the bank, and you gave it to Terrence to gamble on magic internet money. It wasn't gambling, Terrence shouted. It was a strategy. The market crashed. It was a black swan event. Nobody could have predicted it. Everyone predicted it, Terrence, I said. Everyone except you, because you are not a businessman. You are a child playing dress-up in your father's suits. Bernice stood up, her face contorted with rage. She marched over to me, her finger pointed in my face. That is enough, she screamed. I will not have you speak to my son that way. I will not have you dissect our finances like you are the IRS. You are guests in this house, Amara. You are here because we allow you to be here. I looked at her finger shaking in front of my nose. I did not blink. So you admit it, I said calmly. You stopped paying the mortgage to buy a car and gamble on crypto, and now the house is in foreclosure, isn't it? Bernice pulled her hand back as if burned. Who told you that, she whispered. Nobody had to tell me, Bernice, I said. It is public record if you know where to look. But you did not think I knew how to look, did you? You thought I was too stupid, too busy delivering packages. We were going to fix it, she said, her voice trembling. Once the crypto bounced back, we were going to pay the bank. We just needed time. But the bank sold the note. They sold our debt to some predatory investment firm, some vulture fund that buys distressed assets. They are the ones threatening us, Amara. They are the ones who want us out. A predatory investment firm, I repeated. Is that what you call them? Yes, Bernice spat. Vultures. Scavengers. They do not care about families. They do not care that we have lived here for 20 years. They just want the asset. They sent us a notice last week. Demand for payment in full or immediate eviction. That is why we need the 50,000. To hold them off. To buy a lawyer. To fight them. I sat there and I looked at them. I looked at the fear in their eyes. They were terrified of this faceless company, this AMR Holdings that had bought their debt. They were terrified of the monster coming to eat their house. They did not realize the monster was sitting in the living room drinking their water. "And if I do not give you the money?" I asked softly. "If I say no, what happens then?" Bernice drew herself up to her full height. She tried to summon the imperious dignity of the matriarch, but it was frayed at the edges. "If you say no," she said, her voice cold and hard, "then you are no longer part of this family. If you walk out of here with that money in your pocket, you leave Marcus behind. You leave us behind. I will make sure you are cut off from everyone in this town. I will tell everyone you abandoned us in our time of need. I will ruin you, Amara. I will make you a pariah." She leaned down, getting right in my face. "I will divorce you from this family so fast, your head will spin. You will be nothing, just a lonely, bitter woman driving a delivery van. Is that what you want?" I looked at Marcus. He was nodding along with his mother, his face set in a grim line of agreement. He was choosing his side. He was choosing the lie over the truth. He was choosing the Porsche over his wife. I looked at Brittany, who was clutching her stolen necklace, watching me with a mixture of fear and gloating. She thought Bernice had won. She thought the threat of social exile would break me. They really believed they held the power. They really believed that belonging to their dysfunctional, bankrupt, morally bankrupt clan was a prize I would pay $50,000 to keep. I felt a bubble of laughter rise in my chest. It started low and deep, a rumble of pure, unadulterated amusement. I tried to suppress it, but I couldn't. It spilled out of me, loud and genuine, echoing off the high ceilings of the living room. I laughed until tears came to my eyes. I laughed at their arrogance. I laughed at their stupidity. I laughed at the absolute absurdity of their threat. Bernice stared at me as if I had lost my mind. "Stop laughing," she shrieked. "Stop it right now. What is funny? Do you think this is a joke?" I wiped a tear from my cheek and stood up. I looked down at Bernice, who suddenly seemed very small. "Yes, Bernice," I said, catching my breath. "It is a joke. It is the funniest joke I have ever heard." "You threatened to kick me out," I asked, my voice incredulous. "You threatened to cut me off. You threatened to ruin me." I took a step toward her, and she took a step back, her confidence faltering in the face of my laughter. "You cannot kick me out of a family I never wanted to be in," I said. "And you certainly cannot kick me out of this house." "This is my house," Bernice screamed, stomping her foot. "My name is on the deed." "No," I said, shaking my head slowly. "No, it is not. Not anymore." I reached into my purse. I bypassed my wallet. I bypassed my checkbook. I pulled out a thick folded document that Mr. Sterling had given me before I entered the house. It was bound in blue legal paper. I unfolded it and held it up. "Do you know what this is?" Bernice, I asked. She squinted at it, but she did not reach for it. "This is a title transfer," I said. "This is the deed to 404 Paces Ferry Road." I walked over to the coffee table and dropped the document onto the glass surface. It landed with a heavy thud. "You said the bank sold your note to a predatory investment firm," I said. "You called them vultures. You called them scavengers." I looked at Marcus. "Do you remember the name of the company, Marcus?" Marcus looked at the document, then at me. His face was gray. "AMR Holdings," he whispered. "That is right," I said. "AMR Holdings." I turned back to Bernice. "And do you know what AMR stands for, Bernice?" She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. "It stands for Amara Marie Reynolds," I said. "That is my maiden name. That is my company." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a world ending. "I bought your debt, Bernice," I said, my voice calm and deadly. "I bought it 6 months ago when you defaulted. I bought it because I wanted to help you. I was going to forgive the interest. I was going to work out a payment plan. I was going to let you keep your dignity." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "But then you threw wine in my face. You called me a pig. You stole my grandmother's necklace. And you tried to extort me for money to pay for a Porsche. Bernice looked at the document, then at me, then at the document again. She reached out a trembling hand and touched the paper as if testing to see if it was real. You, she whispered. You own this house. I own every brick I said. I own the roof over your head. I own the floor under your feet. I own the chair you are sitting on, because that was listed as collateral in the second mortgage you took out to pay for Brittany's wedding. I leaned in close, so close I could smell the fear on her breath. So when you say you are going to kick me out of the family, you are confused, Bernice. You are very confused. I straightened up and looked at the rest of them. You are not kicking me out, I said. I am evicting you. Evicting, Marcus choked out. Amara, you cannot be serious. We are married. This is my home. Not anymore, Marcus, I said. You made your choice. You chose the strategic partner life. Well, strategic partners pay rent, and you are 6 months behind. I turned to the window where the flashing lights were still painting the driveway in chaotic colors. Sterling is out there, I said. He has the sheriff. He has the paperwork. He has the lock change team waiting in the van. I looked back at Bernice. Her face was a mask of pure terror. The arrogance was gone. The queen was dethroned. You told me to go check the mail, Bernice, I said. Well, you do not need to check the mail. I delivered the message personally. Class is in session, I said, and the first lesson is about ownership. Get your things, I said, checking my watch. You have 15 minutes before the sheriff comes through that door to drag you out. And Bernice, leave the wine. That belongs to me too. The room was spinning with the revelation of the deed, but I needed to sever one last tie before I let Sterling loose. I needed to look into the eyes of the man I had slept beside for 3 years and see if there was anything left worth saving. I needed to know if the husband I married still existed somewhere beneath the layers of cowardice and mama's boy entitlement, or if he had been consumed completely by the rot of this family. I walked over to Marcus. He was staring at the legal document on the coffee table, his mouth hanging open slightly, a line of sweat trickling down his temple. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire world view shatter into dust. He looked pathetic. I reached out and took his hand. His palm was clammy. I pulled him not gently but with firm purpose away from his mother, away from the weeping Brittany and the shell-shocked Otis. I dragged him toward the library alcove, a small recessed area off the main living room. It offered a semblance of privacy, a quiet corner in the middle of the war zone I had just created. Marcus stumbled after me, his feet heavy. When we reached the alcove, I let go of his hand and turned to face him. I blocked the exit with my body. It was just him and me now, no Bernice to whisper in his ear, no Brittany to cheer him on. Marcus, I said, my voice low and steady. Look at me. He raised his eyes. They were swimming with fear and confusion, but also a simmering resentment. He was not looking at me with love. He was looking at me like I was a stranger who had just played a cruel trick on him. What is this, Amara? He whispered, his voice cracking. What is going on? You own the house. You bought the debt. How? You deliver packages. You drive a van. It does not matter how, Marcus, I said, cutting through his confusion. What matters is that I did it. I saved you. I saved your parents. I have been holding this roof over your head for 6 months while you played dress-up and pretended to be a big shot. I did that for you. He shook his head as if trying to clear a fog. You lied to me. You lied about who you are. I protected you, I corrected. I wanted to see if you could love me without the money. I wanted to see if you could respect me when I was just Amara the worker, not Amara the CEO. And tonight, I got my answer, didn't I? Marcus stiffened. He pulled at his tuxedo collar, loosening the bow tie that was suddenly too tight. You humiliated me, he said. In front of Franklin, in front of my mother. You made me look like a fool. You made yourself look like a fool, Marcus, I said. You lied to that man. You stole my title. You stole my hard work and wore it like a costume. Did you really think I was going to sit there and let you erase me from my own company? It is our company, he snapped, his voice rising. We are married. What is yours is mine. That is how it works, Amara. You cannot just hoard success. You are supposed to uplift your husband. You are supposed to make me look good. I stared at him. The entitlement was breathtaking. He truly believed that my blood and sweat belonged to him simply because he had put a ring on my finger. I am giving you one chance, Marcus, I said. One last chance to be the man I thought I married. I pointed back toward the living room where Bernice was currently hyperventilating on the sofa, clutching the deed. Your mother just threw wine in my face, I said. She called me a pig. She tried to extort me. She has treated me like garbage since the day we met. And you stood there and watched. You scrubbed the rug, Marcus. You scrubbed the rug while I was bleeding dignity. Marcus looked away, his jaw working. She is my mother, Amara. She is old school. She has high standards. She is a bully, I said, and you are her enabler. But right now you have to choose. I took a step closer to him, invading his personal space, forcing him to look at me. You have to choose Marcus. Right now. Tonight. It is either her or me. You can walk out that door with me. You can leave this toxic house and this lie behind, and we can try to figure this out. We can try to be real partners. Or you can stay here with her. You can stay in this house that I own with the mother who despises you almost as much as she despises me. Marcus looked at me. I saw the wheels turning in his head. I saw him weighing the options. On one side was his mother, the woman who controlled him, who defined him, who terrified him. On the other side was me, the woman who had just revealed she held all the cards. But then I saw something else shift in his eyes. It was a flicker of something ugly, something dark and petty. It was the look of a man who realized he had been outsmarted by a woman he considered inferior, and he hated me for it. You think you can control me with money? Marcus sneered. You think because you bought the mortgage you own me too. You are just like her, Amara. You are manipulating me. I am offering you a lifeline, I said. I do not need your lifeline, he spat. I am a man, Amara. I have my own life. I have my own respect. Respect, I asked. Who respects you, Marcus? Your mother who treats you like a servant. Your brother who steals your money for crypto scams. She respects me, Marcus shouted. The name hung in the air between us. She. It was not his mother. It was someone else. I went very still. Who is she, Marcus? Marcus laughed a cruel, bitter sound. He crossed his arms and leaned back against the bookshelf, trying to regain some semblance of dominance. You want to talk about truth, Amara. You want to talk about secrets. Okay, let us talk. You are not the only one with a secret life, he smirked. Her name is Ashley. You know her. She is Brittany's best friend. The blonde one. The one who actually knows how to treat a man. I felt a cold shock wave pass through me. Ashley. I knew her. She had been at our wedding. She had eaten at our table. She was the woman who always laughed too hard at Marcus's jokes, the one who always touched his arm when she spoke to him. You are sleeping with Ashley? I asked, my voice hollow. Yes, Marcus said, puffing out his chest again. For 6 months. And you want to know why? Because she does not look at me the way you do. She does not look at me with that quiet judgment. She thinks I am a king, Amara. She listens to me. She respects me. When I tell her I am a strategic partner, she believes me. She does not correct me. She does not try to emasculate me in front of my friends. You lied to her too, I whispered. It is not a lie if I am the man she sees, Marcus said, delusional to the end. She makes me feel big, Amara. You make me feel small. You with your secret money and your silent suffering. You think you are a martyr, but you are just cold. You are an ice queen. Ashley is fire. She is passion. She gives me what I need. I looked at this man, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and I realized that my heart was not breaking. It was hardening. It was turning into something indestructible. So that is your choice, I said. You choose the lie. You choose the woman who validates your delusions. I choose happiness, Marcus said. I choose a woman who knows her place. He pushed off the bookshelf and took a step toward me, looming over me with a newfound aggression. And do not think you can just walk away from this, Amara, he threatened. Do not think you can just wave that deed around and kick us out. We are married. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. I know my rights. He jabbed a finger in my face. I am going to divorce you, Amara. I am going to file tomorrow morning, and I am going to take you for everything you have. I am going to take half that company. I am going to take half this house. I am going to take half of that rainy day fund you thought you were so clever hiding. He laughed again, nasty and triumphant. You thought you were playing chess, but you forgot you married a smart man. I helped you build that life, Amara. I supported you while you were driving that van. I sacrificed for you. And now I am going to cash out. I am going to take my half, and I am going to start a real life with Ashley. A life with style, a life with class. He looked me up and down, his eyes filled with disgust. You can keep the van. You look better in it anyway. I stood there and let his words wash over me. I let the threats and the insults land. They did not hurt anymore. They were just noise. They were the desperate thrashing of a drowning man who thought he was swimming. He thought he was going to take half. He thought he was entitled to the empire I built while he was sleeping with my sister-in-law's best friend. He thought he was a partner. I looked down at the floor, then back up at him. I nodded slowly. Okay, Marcus, I said. He blinked, surprised by my surrender. Okay, he asked. Okay, I repeated. You want a divorce? You can have it. I agree. He smiled a shark-like grin. Good. Then we understand each other. You write the check, Amara. You write a big check, and maybe I will let you keep the company name. But I want my share. I reached into my small clutch purse. I did not pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was not the deed. It was a standard document. A document every single employee at AMR Logistics signed on their first day. I smoothed it out on the shelf next to us. You are right about one thing, Marcus, I said. You are a smart man. Or at least you think you are. But you have a fatal flaw. You never read the fine print. What is that? Marcus asked, looking at the paper suspiciously. This, I said, tapping the document, is your employment contract. The one you signed 5 years ago when you started as a warehouse associate. The one you signed electronically without reading because you were too busy trying to figure out where the break room was. Marcus scoffed. So what? I quit. You cannot hold me to a job I do not want. I am not holding you, Marcus, I said. I am firing you. But that is not the important part. The important part is Section 4, Paragraph C. I pointed to a block of text near the bottom. It is the morals clause, Marcus. It is standard for all employees, but it is very specific for anyone in management or anyone claiming to represent the company. It states that any employee found engaging in conduct that damages the reputation of the company or demonstrates a lack of moral character, including but not limited to documented infidelity, while using company resources or misrepresenting their position for personal gain, forfeits all unvested benefits, bonuses, and severance. I looked up at him. And then there is the non-compete and intellectual property clause. It states that any claim of ownership or partnership not backed by legal stock certificates is fraud. Marcus rolled his eyes. That is legal mumbo-jumbo, Amara. That does not trump marriage laws. I am your husband. I get half. I smiled. And that is where you are wrong, Marcus. Because you also signed the spousal waiver attached to the company's incorporation documents. You signed it 3 years ago when I incorporated AMR. I told you it was just tax paperwork for my little delivery business. You signed it because you could not be bothered to read it. You signed away any claim to the business assets in the event of a divorce. His face went slack. The arrogance drained out of him, leaving behind a terrified child. I never signed that, he stammered. You did, I said. I have the digital signature. I have the timestamp. I have the IP address. It was signed from your Xbox, Marcus. I leaned in close. You get nothing, I whispered. You get no house. You get no company. You get no alimony, because adultery bars you from that in Georgia when it is the cause of the separation. And you just confess to it. I pulled back and looked at him with pity. You are leaving this marriage with exactly what you brought into it, Marcus. Your clothes, your video games, and your ego. Marcus looked at the paper, then at me. His hands started to shake. Amara, wait, he said, his voice high and thin. Let us talk about this. Ashley, she means nothing. It was just a fling. I love you. I turned my back on him. It is too late for that, Marcus, I said, walking away. Where are you going? He cried, reaching out for me. I am going to finish this, I said. You wanted to be a big shot, Marcus. Well, big shots face big consequences. I walked out of the alcove, leaving him standing there in the shadows, a man who had gambled everything on a lie and lost. I walked back toward the living room where Sterling was waiting. It was time to take out the trash. The silence in the library alcove had been heavy, but the noise that shattered it was deafening. It started as a low wail in the distance, growing louder and sharper with every passing second until it seemed to vibrate against the very glass of the windows. Then came the lights. Red and blue strobes cut through the darkness of the front lawn, slashing across the manicured hedges and painting the interior of the living room in chaotic, violent bursts of color. I walked back into the main room just as the first siren died down into a low growl. The transformation in the family was instantaneous. Bernice, who moments ago had been hyperventilating on the sofa, suddenly sat bolt upright. A look of malicious triumph spread across her face, erasing the fear that the deed had put there. In her delusional mind, she had rewritten the narrative in a split second. She decided that this was her salvation. She decided that the authorities were here for me. Thank God, Bernice cried out, clasping her hands together. Thank God the police are here. Otis let them in immediately. I want this woman removed from my house in handcuffs. She pointed a shaking finger at me, her eyes gleaming with vindication. You thought you could come in here and threaten us with fake papers, Amara. You thought you could scare us, but now you are going to see what happens when you cross real people with real connections. Otis hurried to the front door, fumbling with the lock, his hands trembling. He looked relieved too. He was a man who had spent his life hiding behind his wife, and the law was just another skirt for him to hide behind. Brittany peeked out from behind the armchair she had been cowering in. She smoothed her hair and wiped the smudge of gravy from her cheek. She was already practicing her victim face, preparing to tell the officers how the crazy sister-in-law had attacked her. Marcus walked past me, puffing out his chest. He adjusted his tuxedo jacket, trying to look like the lord of the manor. He shot me a look of pity mixed with disgust. You brought this on yourself, Amara, he said. You came into a respectable home and caused a disturbance. You assaulted my sister-in-law. You tried to extort my parents. I hope you have bail money in that little purse of yours because you are going to need it. I did not say a word. I just stood by the fireplace, my hands clasped loosely in front of me, and watched them. It was fascinating in a morbid way. It was like watching actors in a play who did not realize the genre had changed from a drama to a tragedy. They were so convinced of their own righteousness, so certain that the world operated according to their rules, that they could not see the cliff they were standing on. The front door swung open, and the night air rushed in cold and biting. The foyer filled instantly with uniforms. It was not just a patrol car responding to a noise complaint, it was a raid. The sheriff himself walked in first. Sheriff Patterson was a large man, a mountain of authority in a tan uniform with a star pinned to his chest. He was known in Buckhead, known for being tough and fair and absolutely intolerant of nonsense. Behind him walked 4 deputies, their faces grim, their hands resting near their belts. They moved with precision, spreading out to secure the room, their eyes scanning for threats. And behind the wall of blue walked Mr. Sterling, He looked out of place and yet completely in command. He wore a charcoal three-piece suit that cost more than Marcus made in a year. He carried a slim leather briefcase in one hand. He did not look at the art on the walls. He did not look at the crystal chandelier. He walked into that house like he owned it, because in a legal sense, he represented the person who did. Bernice scrambled off the sofa and rushed toward the sheriff, her heels clicking frantically on the floor. She threw her arms out in a gesture of dramatic welcome. "Sheriff Patterson," she exclaimed, her voice high and breathless. "Oh, thank heavens you are here! We have been held hostage in our own home. This woman, she is deranged," she broke in. "She assaulted my daughter-in-law. She has been threatening us for an hour. Please arrest her immediately." She pointed at me, her finger trembling with accusation. Sheriff Patterson stopped. He looked down at Bernice with an expression of mild annoyance, as if a small, noisy dog were yapping at his heels. He did not smile. He did not offer a greeting. He simply looked past her. "Ma'am, step aside," the sheriff said, his voice a deep rumble that brooked no argument. Bernice blinked, confused. "But Sheriff, you do not understand. She is dangerous. She is throwing things. She is drunk. Look at her dress. She is a mess." "Step aside," the sheriff repeated louder this time. One of the deputies stepped forward and gently but firmly moved Bernice out of the path. She stumbled back, gasping in indignation. She looked at Marcus, expecting him to intervene. "Officer, my mother is trying to tell you that we are the victims here," Marcus said, stepping up with his strategic partner voice. "I am Marcus Vance. I live here. This woman is my wife, but she is having a mental health crisis. We need her removed for her own safety." The deputy ignored him completely. He did not even make eye contact. He just continued to clear a path through the center of the room. Sterling walked through that path. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace. He walked past Otis, who was pressed against the wall looking like he wanted to merge with the wallpaper. He walked past Brittany, who was trying to look small and innocent. He walked past Marcus, who was standing there with his mouth open, realizing for the first time that no one was listening to him. Sterling walked straight to me. The room went quiet. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the heavy breathing of Bernice, who was watching with wide, terrified eyes. She was waiting for Sterling to serve me with papers. She was waiting for him to tell me I was under arrest. She was waiting for the hammer to fall on me. Sterling stopped 3 feet in front of me. He set his briefcase down on the antique ottoman Bernice had tried to make me sit on. He clicked the latches open, the sound sharp and loud in the silence. He reached inside and pulled out a thick, bound document. It was stamped with the official seal of the county clerk. He held it in both hands, treating it with reverence. He looked me in the eye. He did not look at me like a delivery driver. He did not look at me like a hysterical woman. He looked at me with the deference of a soldier reporting to his general. "Madam Chairwoman Sterling," said his voice clear and resonant, carrying to every corner of the room. The words hung in the air. "Madam Chairwoman." Bernice made a small, choking sound. Marcus took a step back, his face going slack. Sterling continued, ignoring their reactions. "The writ of possession has been executed and filed with the court. The sheriff has verified the deed and the foreclosure documents. The property is legally secured under AMR Holdings effective immediately." He handed me the document. "We also have the restraining orders you requested ready for service," he added, "and the forensic accounting team has completed their preliminary audit of the unauthorized transfers from the company accounts to the personal accounts of Mr. Marcus Vance and Mrs. Brittany Henderson. The evidence package is ready for the district attorney." He paused, and then lowered his voice slightly, though it was still audible to everyone. "Everything is done, Madam Chairwoman. We are ready for your command." I took the document from him. It felt heavy in my hands. Solid. Real. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice calm. "You made good time." "Traffic was light, ma'am," Sterling said, allowing himself a small, thin smile. "And for a matter of this urgency, we felt it best not to delay." I looked past Sterling at my family. They were frozen. They looked like statues carved out of salt. They were trying to process the words they had just heard. Chairwoman, AMR Holdings, foreclosure, evidence, district attorney. It was too much for them to comprehend. Their brains were short-circuiting. They could not reconcile the image of Amara the gig worker with Amara the chairwoman. It did not fit their worldview. It broke their reality. Bernice was the first to speak. Her voice was a whisper, a dry rasp. Chairwoman, she said. What did he call you? I looked at her. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just looked at her with the cold indifference of a stranger. He called me by my title. Bernice, I said. Marcus shook his head violently. No, he said. No. This is a trick. Who is this guy, Amara? Is he an actor? Did you hire him to scare us? You cannot afford a lawyer like this. You drive a van. I sighed. It was exhausting, really, their refusal to see what was right in front of them. Sterling, turn around, I said. Sterling turned slowly to face Marcus. Do you know who this is, Marcus? I asked, pointing to my husband. Sterling looked Marcus up and down. His expression was one of mild distaste, like he was looking at a stain on a lapel. I believe this is employee number 492, Sterling said. Mr. Marcus Vance, currently employed as a warehouse shift supervisor at our distribution center in Decatur. Marcus turned red. I am a strategic partner, he shouted. I run operations. Mr. Vance, Sterling said, his voice icy. Your employment contract lists you as a supervisor level 2. Your duties include scheduling inventory checks and forklift maintenance. You have no strategic authority. You have no partnership agreement. And as of this morning, when the internal audit flagged your expense account for fraud, you are also currently under investigation for embezzlement. Embezzlement? Marcus squeaked. Using the company fuel card to fill up a Porsche Cayenne that does not belong to the fleet is considered theft, Mr. Vance Sterling said, as is charging personal dinners at the Buckhead Club to the warehouse supply budget. We have the receipts. Marcus looked at Terrence. Terrence looked at the floor. The Porsche, the dinners. They had been living the high life on my dime, stealing from my company while insulting me to my face. And you, Bernice, Sterling said, turning his attention to the matriarch. You have been living in a property owned by AMR Holdings for 6 months without remitting a single payment. We sent 14 certified letters. You refused to sign for them. We posted notices on your door. You tore them down. You assumed that because the bank sold the debt disappeared. He took a step toward her. The debt did not disappear, Mrs. Henderson. It just changed hands, and now the hands that hold it are closing into a fist. Bernice looked at me. Her eyes were wide, pleading, terrified. Amara, she said, her voice trembling. Amara, tell him to stop. Tell him this is a misunderstanding. We are family. You cannot do this. You are one of us. I walked over to her. I stood right in front of her, looking down at the woman who had tormented me for 3 years. One of us, I asked. A pig. That is what you called me. A filthy pig. Bernice flinched. I was angry. I did not mean it. And the wine, I asked. Did you mean to throw the wine? She stammered, unable to find an excuse. And the necklace, I asked, pointing to Brittany, who was now trying to unclasp the pearls with shaking fingers. Did you mean to steal from a dead woman? Bernice started to cry. It was an ugly sound, a wail of self-pity. I just wanted to keep the family together, she sobbed. I just wanted us to look good. I did it for us, Amara. You did it for yourself, I said. You did it because you are hollow inside. You need the fancy house and the parties and the lies to fill up the empty space where your character should be. I turned back to Sterling. Sheriff, I said, addressing the lawman for the first time. I am the legal owner of this property. These people are squatters. They have damaged the premises. They have stolen personal property, and they are currently disturbing the peace. The sheriff nodded. He stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt. We have the warrant, Ma, and he said, his voice deep and authoritative. We are ready to execute. Do you want them removed? I looked at the dining room table where the remains of the anniversary feast lay cold and uneaten. I looked at the wine stain on the rug. I looked at the family that had tried to break me. "Yes, Sheriff," I said. "I want them removed. Immediately." "Wait!" Marcus screamed. "Wait, Amara! You cannot do this! Where are we supposed to go?" "It is midnight." I looked at my husband. I looked at the man who had promised to protect me and then fed me to the wolves. "I hear the Motel 6 off the highway has vacancies," I said. "They have a light on for you, Marcus. It fits your budget." "But my clothes," Brittany wailed. "My shoes, my bags. I cannot leave my things." The sheriff stepped in. "You can take what you can carry in your hands, miss. Everything else stays until the civil asset forfeiture is processed. The court will decide what belongs to you and what belongs to the creditors. And right now the creditor is standing right there." He pointed at me. Brittany looked at me with pure hatred. "You planned this," she hissed. "You planned this whole thing. You set us up." "I did not set you up, Brittany," I said. "I just stopped catching you when you fell." Sterling cleared his throat. "Madam Chairwoman, if I may. We also have the matter of the company car. The Porsche. It is parked in the driveway. The keys are currently in Mr. Terence Henderson's pocket. It was purchased with embezzled funds. We need to secure it." I nodded. "Take the keys, Sterling." Terence looked like he was going to fight. He balled his hands into fists. But then he looked at the 4 deputies standing behind the sheriff. He looked at their guns. He looked at their batons. And he realized that for the first time in his life, he could not talk his way out of trouble. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the heavy black key fob. He threw it at Sterling. It hit Sterling in the chest and fell to the floor. Sterling did not flinch. He picked up the key and dusted it off. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," he said politely. "We will add a charge of assaulting an officer of the court to the list." The room was spinning for them. Their world was collapsing in real time. The walls of the mansion they loved so much were closing in. Bernice sank to her knees. She grabbed the hem of my ruined dress. She buried her face in the fabric, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, Amara," she begged. "Please do not do this. I am an old woman. I have nowhere to go. This is my home. I raised you up. I let you marry my son. Have mercy." I looked down at her. I felt a flicker of pity, but it was faint like a dying ember. Mercy was for people who made mistakes. This was not a mistake. This was a lifestyle. I pulled my dress from her grip. "You did not raise me, Bernice," I said. "You tolerated me. And you did not let me marry your son. I married him in spite of you." I stepped back. "Get up, Bernice," I said. "Have some dignity. The police are watching." She looked up at me, her makeup running down her face, her eyes red and swollen. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I am the woman who signs the checks," I said. I turned to the sheriff. "Get them out," I said. "All of them. Now." Mr. Sterling handed me the thick leather-bound folder with a reverence that silenced the room. The weight of it in my hands felt like Judgment Day. I ran my fingers over the embossed logo on the cover. AMR Holdings. 3 letters that struck fear into the heart of every competitor in the Southeast logistics market. 3 letters that my husband and his mother had unknowingly cursed at their dinner table for months. I looked at the cover, and then I looked at the family that had tried to bury me. They were huddled together like survivors of a shipwreck watching the tide come in. Bernice was pale, her hands clutching the edge of the sofa as if it were a life raft. Brittany was weeping silently, her mascara running tracks down her cheeks, ruining her perfect makeup. And Marcus stood there looking like a man who had walked into a room and forgotten why he was there. His eyes were fixed on the folder in my hands. He recognized the logo. He saw it every day on the side of the trucks at the warehouse. He saw it on the letterhead of the memos he ignored. He saw it on the pay stubs he cashed without a second thought. I flipped the folder open. The sound of the heavy paper turning was sharp in the quiet room. "You called the new owners of your debt vultures, Bernice." I said, my voice steady and low. You said they were faceless predators who wanted to strip you of your dignity. You were half right. I am a predator. But I am certainly not faceless. I turned the document around so they could see the incorporation papers. The gold seal of the state of Georgia caught the light. AMR Holdings, I read aloud. Do you know what that stands for, Marcus? Marcus shook his head slowly, his eyes locked on the paper. No, he whispered. It is just a corporation. It is just a name. It is an acronym, I corrected. AMR. Amara Marie Reynolds. I let that sink in. I watched the realization wash over him like a bucket of ice water. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked from the paper to me, his eyes searching my face for the lie, but finding only the hard, cold truth. I am the CEO, Marcus. I am the founder. I am the majority shareholder. I own the trucks. I own the warehouses. I own the distribution centers. And I own the debt on this house. Bernice let out a strangled gasp. That is impossible, she shrieked. You are a delivery driver. I see you leave in that uniform every morning. I see you come home sweating. You drive a van Amara. CEOs do not drive vans. CEOs do not have dirt under their fingernails. You are lying. This is a forgery. I laughed. It was a dark sound devoid of humor. You see a uniform and you see a servant. Bernice, I said. That is your blindness. That is your failure. Yes, I wear the uniform. Yes, I drive the van. Do you want to know why? Because that is all you are capable of. Brittany spat from the corner, trying to regain some of her venom. Because nobody would hire you to run a lemonade stand. I ignored her. My eyes were on Marcus. I wanted him to understand the depth of his ignorance. I wear the uniform because I built this company from the ground up, I said. I started with one truck and a maxed-out credit card 5 years ago. I built it box by box, mile by mile. And even now, with 500 employees and contracts in 4 states, I still drive the routes. I still work the floor. I took a step toward Marcus. It is called quality control, Marcus, I said. It is called leadership. I know every pothole on I-285. I know which loading docks have broken ramps. I know which drivers are skimming fuel and which ones are working double shifts to feed their kids. I know my business because I am in my business. I do not sit in an ivory tower pretending to be important like you. Marcus backed away until his legs hit the coffee table. He stumbled but caught himself. But you never told me, he stammered. We have been married for 3 years. You let me think you were broke. You let me pay for dinner at Applebee's like I was doing you a favor. Why would you hide this? Because I wanted to know who you were, I said. And I found out, didn't I? I found out you are a man who is ashamed of his wife's work. I found out you are a man who lies to impress strangers. I found out you are a man who steals. Steals, Marcus said, his voice high and defensive. I never stole anything. I looked at Sterling. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out another file. This one was thinner but just as deadly. He handed it to me. I opened the file and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a payroll record. You have worked for AMR for 5 years, Marcus, I said. You were one of my first hires when we expanded to the Decatur facility. You were a packer then. You moved up to shift supervisor. You think you got that promotion because you are a genius strategist. You got it because I told HR to give you a chance. I told them to overlook your lateness and your attitude because I thought you had potential. I thought you just needed a break. I held the payroll record up to his face. Look at the signature line, Marcus. Look at the bottom of the check you cash every 2 weeks. Whose name is there? Marcus squinted. He had never looked. In 5 years of cashing checks, he had never once looked at the signature of the person who paid him. He only looked at the numbers. He only looked at what he could get. It is a stamp, he whispered. It is just a signature stamp. Read the name I commanded. He leaned in. His eyes widened. His breath hitched in his throat. Amara Reynolds, he read. He looked up at me and his face was a mask of pure shock. It was as if the floor had dropped out from under him. You, he said. You sign my checks. I sign everyone's checks, Marcus, I said. I am the reason you have health insurance. I am the reason you have a 401k that you probably cashed out to buy crypto. I am the reason you have a job. And you did not even know it. You were so busy playing the big man, so busy pretending to be a strategic partner, that you did not even know who you were working for. You thought you were too good for the woman in the uniform, but you were eating from her hand the whole time. Bernice was shaking her head back and forth, a rhythmic denial of reality. No, she muttered. No, this cannot be right. My son is an executive. He told me he runs the place. He told me the owners rely on him. He lied to you, Bernice, I said. Just like he lied to Franklin. Just like he lied to Ashley. Marcus is not an executive. He is a supervisor, and not a very good one. I turned back to the file Sterling had given me. I pulled out a stack of photos, grainy black and white images taken from security cameras. You said you never stole Marcus, I said. Then explain these. I threw the photos onto the coffee table. They fanned out like a winning hand of poker. That is you, Marcus, I said, pointing to the first photo. At the loading dock. At 2 a.m. Loading cases of high-end electronics into the back of your friend's pickup truck. I pointed to the next one. That is you using the company fuel card to fill up Terrence's Porsche. And that, I said, pointing to the last one, is you clocking in for overtime shifts you never worked while you were actually at the motel with Ashley. Marcus looked at the photos. There was no denying them. His face was clearly visible. The timestamps were damning. I can explain, he stammered. It was a misunderstanding. I was just borrowing the electronics. I was going to bring them back. Borrowing, I asked. You were borrowing iPhones. You were borrowing gaming consoles. We have the inventory reports, Marcus. We know exactly what is missing. We have been building a case against a theft ring in the warehouse for months. We just did not know the ringleader was sleeping in my bed. I felt a surge of disgust so strong it almost made me sick. I had shared a life with this man. I had cooked for him. I had washed his clothes, and all the while he was robbing me blind. You are a thief, Marcus, I said. You are a liar and a thief, and you are not even a good one. Marcus looked at his mother. He looked at her for salvation, for an excuse for anything that would make this nightmare stop. But Bernice was staring at the photos, her face gray. Even she could not spin this. Even she could not pretend that theft was a misunderstood virtue. Amara, please, Marcus begged, his voice cracking. Do not do this. I will pay it back. I will work double shifts. Just do not call the police. I looked at Sterling. He was watching Marcus with the impassive gaze of a man who had seen it all before. The police are already here, Mr. Vance, Sterling said calmly. And the district attorney has the file. Grand larceny and embezzlement are serious charges. Marcus dropped to his knees. It was a pathetic echo of his earlier performance cleaning the rug, but this time he was not scrubbing wine, he was begging for his life. Amara, I am your husband, he cried, grabbing my hand. You cannot send your husband to jail. Think about our vows. For better or worse. I snatched my hand away. You broke those vows the minute you touched Ashley, I said. You broke them when you stole from me. You broke them when you let your mother treat me like an animal. I reached into the folder one last time. I pulled out a single sheet of crisp white paper. It was not a legal filing. It was a standard HR form. Simple, brutal, final. I looked down at him kneeling in his tuxedo in the house he no longer lived in, wearing clothes he bought with stolen money. You wanted to be a big shot, Marcus, I said. You wanted to be a partner. Well, partners have to be accountable. I dropped the paper. It fluttered down and landed on his chest. This is a notice of termination, I said. Marcus stared at the paper. It was signed by me. Amara Reynolds, CEO. You are fired, Marcus. I said, my voice ringing with finality. You are fired from AMR Logistics. You are fired from this marriage. And you are fired from my life. I turned to Sterling. Have him escorted off the premises, I said, and make sure he does not take anything that belongs to the company. That includes the tuxedo. I paid for that too. Marcus looked up at me, his eyes full of tears and hatred. You cannot do this, he screamed. You are nothing. You are just a driver. I smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had just dropped the weight of the world from her shoulders. I am the boss, Marcus, I said, and your shift is over. With Marcus sobbing on the floor like a child who had dropped his ice cream, I turned my attention to the final parasite in the room. Brittany was trying to inch her way toward the French doors that led to the patio. She was moving slowly, clutching her purse to her chest, as if she could smuggle her stolen lifestyle out under her arm. She thought that because she was not an employee, and because she was not a blood relative, she was immune to the carnage I was unleashing. She thought her whiteness and her tears would protect her. She was wrong. Where are you going, Brittany? I asked, my voice cutting through the sound of Marcus's whimpering. Brittany froze. She turned around, her eyes wide and glassy with fear. I am leaving, she stammered. This has nothing to do with me. This is a family matter. I am calling my father. He is going to sue you for emotional distress. Your father, I repeated. You mean the man who cut you off 3 years ago because you stole his credit card to pay for a spring break trip to Cabo. I do not think he is going to take your call, Brittany. Her face flushed a deep, ugly red. How do you know that? She hissed. I know everything, I said, walking slowly toward her. I know why your boutique failed. I know why you were evicted from your condo before you moved in with Bernice. And I know exactly why you are lying about being pregnant. I am not lying, she shrieked, clutching her stomach. How dare you? You are just jealous because you are dried up. I looked at Sterling. He handed me the third file. It was thick. It was heavy. It was the autopsy of a fake life. I opened the file and pulled out a receipt. It was dated 3 days ago. Dr. Evans, I read. Plastic surgery and aesthetic medicine. $4,000 for a consultation and deposit on a tummy tuck, and liposuction procedure scheduled for next month. I held the receipt up. Pregnant women do not get tummy tucks, Brittany, I said. Doctors do not operate on women carrying children. You are not pregnant. You are just bloated from the alcohol and the lies. Bernice gasped from the sofa. Brittany, tell her she is wrong. Show her the ultrasound. Brittany looked trapped. She looked at Terrence, who was staring at her with a dawning horror. I miscarried, she improvised, her voice trembling. Just now. The stress. You caused it, Amara. You killed my baby. I shook my head. There was no baby, Brittany. There never was. You made it up because Terrence was talking about divorce. You made it up so Bernice would buy you that necklace. You made it up because you needed a shield. I turned to Terrence. He looked like a man who had been punched in the gut. She is not pregnant, Terrence, I said. But she is expensive. I pulled another stack of papers from the file. These were bank statements, not personal ones. These were the statements for the Greater Atlanta Community Church Charity Fund. Bernice had appointed Brittany as the treasurer 6 months ago, a way to give her useless daughter-in-law some status in the community. Do you recognize these, Bernice? I asked, holding them up. These are the ledger sheets for the church building fund, the money that was supposed to build a shelter for the homeless. Bernice squinted. Brittany has been doing a wonderful job, she said weakly. The bishop said donations are up. Donations are up, I agreed. But the balance is 0. I threw the statements onto the floor. They scattered like confetti at a funeral. She stole it, Bernice, I said. She stole every dime. $150,000. Gone. Brittany screamed. That is a lie. I invested it. I put it in a high-yield account. You put it in a high-yield account called Louis Vuitton, I said. And Gucci. And the Four Seasons Hotel. I looked at Terrence, and she did not spend it alone. Terrence. Terrence stepped forward, his hands clenching and unclenching. What do you mean she did not spend it alone? I pulled out the photos. These were different from the ones of Marcus. These were taken in broad daylight. They showed Brittany sitting at outdoor cafes. They showed her walking into luxury hotels, and in every photo she was with a man who was definitely not Terrence. He was tall. He was fit. He looked like a model. Who is that? Terrence whispered. That is Darnell, I said. He is her personal trainer. Or at least, that is what she listed him as on the expense reports she forged. She paid him a salary out of the church fund, Terrence, $5,000 a month, for consulting. I tossed the photos at Terrence. He caught one. He stared at it. It showed Brittany kissing Darnell's cheek while he held a shopping bag from Saks Fifth Avenue. A bag paid for with money meant for orphans. She has been keeping him, Terrence, I said. She has been using your mother's reputation and the church's money to pay for her boyfriend. She told him she was a wealthy heiress. She told him you were just her business manager. Terrence looked up from the photo. His eyes were red. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He had tolerated the debt, he had tolerated the failed businesses, but this, being cuckolded by his wife while she stole from God, this was too much. Is this true? Terrence asked, his voice shaking. Brittany backed away until she hit the wall. Terrence. Baby, listen to me. She doctored those photos. She is trying to break us up. Darnell is just a friend. He is gay. He does not look gay in the picture where his hand is down your shirt, Brittany, I said coldly. Terrence let out a roar. It was a primal animal sound. He did not scream words. He just screamed pain. He lunged. He crossed the room faster than I thought possible. He grabbed Brittany by the shoulders and slammed her against the wall. A painting of Bernice fell off the hook and crashed to the floor, glass shattering everywhere. You lying witch! Terrence screamed, spitting in her face. You stole from my mother. You stole from the church, and you slept with him. Brittany clawed at his face. Get off me, she shrieked. Get off me, you loser. You could not give me what I needed. You are broke. You are pathetic. Darnell is a real man. That was the wrong thing to say. Terrence drew back his hand and slapped her. The sound was like a whip crack. Brittany's head snapped to the side. The necklace, the stolen heirloom, caught on Terrence's button as she fell. The string broke. Pearls, hundreds of antique pearls cascaded onto the hardwood floor. They bounced and rolled in every direction, a rain of white tears. The sound of them hitting the wood was a staccato rhythm of destruction. Pick, 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 pick. Big Mama's necklace was destroyed. My heart lurched, but I did not move. I let them destroy each other. Terrence grabbed her hair. He was shaking her now, screaming obscenities. Brittany was scratching, kicking, biting like a cornered rat. It was ugly. It was violent. It was the true face of this family, stripped of their tuxedos and their pretenses. Bernice was screaming, Stop it! Stop it! My house, my beautiful house! She did not care about the violence. She cared about the drywall. She cared about the noise. Police, the sheriff bellowed. The deputies swarmed in. Two of them grabbed Terrence, hauling him off Brittany. He fought them, swinging wildly, blinded by rage. It took a taser to bring him down. The sharp crackle of electricity filled the room, followed by Terrence's body going rigid and collapsing onto the sea of scattered pearls. Brittany slid down the wall, sobbing, holding her cheek. Her dress was torn. Her hair was a mess. She looked up at the deputies with wild eyes. He hit me, she screamed, pointing at Terrence, who was groaning on the floor. Arrest him. He is crazy. One of the deputies looked at her. He pulled out a pair of handcuffs. You are both under arrest, Ma, he said. We have a warrant for grand larceny and embezzlement. And now we have domestic battery and assaulting an officer. They hauled Brittany to her feet. She kicked and screamed, calling them names, threatening to sue, calling for her daddy. They cuffed her hands behind her back. The metal clicked shut. They dragged Terrence up, zip-tying his hands. He was weeping now, broken and defeated. I watched them being led away. I watched my sister-in-law, the woman who had called me a pig, being dragged out of the house in handcuffs. I watched my brother-in-law, the man who had bought a Porsche with stolen money, stumbling out in disgrace. The room was suddenly quiet except for the sound of Bernice sobbing on the sofa and Marcus sniveling in the corner. Sterling walked over to the mess on the floor. He bent down and picked up the gold clasp of the necklace. The centerpiece. The diamonds were still intact. He walked over to me and placed it in my hand. "The rest can be restrung, Madam Chairwoman," he said quietly. "We will have the pearls collected." I closed my hand around the gold filigree. It was warm. I looked at Bernice. She was staring at the empty doorway where her favorite son and her prized daughter-in-law had just been marched out. She looked old. She looked small. "This is your legacy, Bernice," I said, my voice cutting through her sobs. She looked up at me, hate burning in her eyes. "You did this," she hissed. "You destroyed my family." "I destroyed your illusions," I said. "I exposed the rot you tried to hide under expensive rugs and wine." I pointed to the door. "Look at them, Bernice. Look at what you created. A thief, an adulterer, an embezzler, and a liar. That is your bloodline. That is your masterpiece. You touted Brittany as the daughter you never had." I continued. "You said she was classy. You said she was a visionary. Well, she is a visionary, all right. She envisioned a life she did not earn, and she stole from God to get it. And Terrence, the businessman, he is going to jail for assaulting a cop. And Marcus, the strategic partner, he is fired and divorced." I walked closer to her, stepping over the scattered pearls. "You called me a pig, Bernice. You said I was filthy. But look around you. Who is the filthy one now? Who is the criminal? Who is the disgrace? It is not me. I am the only one standing," I said. "I am the only one with clean hands. I am the only one who owns anything in this room." Bernice buried her face in her hands, wailing. "My babies, my poor babies. Your babies are grown men and women who made choices," I said, "and now they are paying the bill." I turned to the sheriff. "Is the house secure, Sheriff?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am," the sheriff said, touching the brim of his hat. "We have cleared the suspects. The remaining occupants need to vacate immediately." I looked at Bernice. I looked at Marcus. "You heard the man," I said. "This is the end of the party." Bernice stood up shakily. She looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. She looked at the shattered glass, the wine stains, the pearls on the floor. "Where will I go?" she whispered. "I do not know, Bernice," I said, turning away. "But you cannot stay here." I walked to the window and looked out. I saw Brittany being shoved into the back of a squad car. I saw Terrence being loaded into another. I saw the lights flashing, illuminating the neighborhood that would be talking about this night for 20 years. I felt a deep, profound sense of relief. It was over. The lies were dead. The truth was out. And I was the last woman standing. The silence that followed the departure of the squad cars was heavy and absolute. The flashing blue lights had faded into the distance, leaving the living room bathed in the harsh, unforgiving light of the crystal chandelier. The party was officially over. The guests were gone. The criminals were in custody. Now only the remnants remained. Bernice sat on the velvet sofa, her posture collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Otis stood by the fireplace, staring into the dead embers, his face a mask of defeat. Marcus was still on the floor, nursing his bruised ego and his lost future. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. It was a dry, precise sound that commanded attention. He stepped into the center of the room, his leather shoes making no sound on the expensive Persian rug that Marcus had so desperately tried to clean earlier. He held a single document in his hand. It was not a thick file like the others. It was a single sheet of legal paper stamped with the red seal of the Fulton County Court. "Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Henderson Sterling," began his voice devoid of sympathy. We have one final matter to conclude this evening. It is the matter of the property located at 404 Paces Ferry Road. Bernice looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed and dull. "What more do you want?" she whispered. "You took my son. You took my daughter-in-law. You humiliated me. Is that not enough?" "It is not about what I want," Mrs. Henderson Sterling said. "It is about what the law requires." He raised the document. "This is a writ of possession issued by the Superior Court of Fulton County. It authorizes the immediate reclamation of this property by the lien holder." Bernice shook her head, confused. "We are fighting the bank?" she said, her voice gaining a little strength. "We have a lawyer." He filed a motion. "We have 30 days. He told me we have 30 days. "Your lawyer filed a motion against the bank," Sterling corrected. "But the bank no longer owns your mortgage, Bernice. They sold the note 3 months ago. They washed their hands of you." "Sold it?" Bernice asked, looking at Otis. "Who did they sell it to?" Sterling gestured to me. "They sold it to AMR Holdings," Sterling said. Bernice stared at me. The realization hit her slowly, like a poison taking effect. AMR Holdings. The company she had just learned belonged to me. The company she had mocked. The company she thought was a delivery service. "You," she breathed. "You bought my house." I walked over to the fireplace and stood next to Otis. I ran my hand along the marble mantel. It was cold. "I did not buy your house, Bernice," I said. "I bought your debt. I bought your mistakes. I bought the second mortgage you took out to pay for the country club membership. I bought the line of credit you used to pay for Brittany's wedding. I bought the unpaid property taxes you tried to hide." I turned to face her. "I bought it all," I said. 3 months ago." Bernice looked at Otis. "Did you know this?" she demanded. Otis shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I saw the transfer notice," he whispered. "I saw the name AMR. I thought it was just another bank. I did not know. God help me, I did not know it was her." "You should have read the mail, Otis," I said. "I sent you notices. I sent you offers to restructure. I offered to lower the interest rate. I offered to let you stay if you just started paying the principal. I treated you better than any bank would have. I treated you like family." "And what did you do, Bernice?" I asked. "You threw the letters in the trash. You told Marcus that the creditors were bluffing. You told everyone you were untouchable." Bernice stood up shakily. Her legs were weak, but her pride was still trying to hold her upright. "You cannot do this," she said. "You cannot kick us out. We have rights. This is our home. We have lived here for 20 years. My babies grew up here." "Your babies are in the back of a police car," Bernice, I reminded her. "And this is not your home. It is a building you occupied while you spent money you did not have." Sterling stepped forward. "The foreclosure was finalized 30 days ago, Mrs. Henderson. The redemption period has expired. You are technically trespassing. The owner has been lenient. She allowed you to remain on the premises for the anniversary party. She did not want to ruin your celebration." Bernice looked at me with wide disbelief. "You knew," she asked. "You knew tonight when you walked in. You knew when I threw the wine. You knew when I called you names. You owned the house the whole time." I nodded. I knew. "I had the deed in my purse, Bernice. I sat at your table and I listened to you insult me. I listened to you call me poor. I listened to you tell your friends I was a delivery girl. And I sat there knowing that I could snap my fingers and put you on the street." "Why?" Bernice wailed. "Why did you wait? Why did you let me make a fool of myself?" "Because I wanted to give you a chance," I said. "I wanted to see if there was any humanity left in you. I wanted to see if you would treat me with basic dignity even when you thought I was nothing. I wanted to see if you were capable of kindness without a price tag attached." I walked closer to her. "And you failed, Bernice. You failed the test. You threw wine in my face. You stole my inheritance. You tried to extort me. You showed me exactly who you are. And now I am showing you the door." Bernice looked around the room. She looked at the paintings on the walls, the heavy curtains, the antique furniture. It was all she had. It was her identity. Without this house, she was just a mean old woman with a lot of debt and a criminal record in the family. She collapsed. She did not faint, she just sank to her knees on the rug Marcus had tried to clean. She clasped her hands together in a gesture of prayer. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup, making her look old and desperate. Amara, please, she begged. Please do not do this. Where will we go? We have no money. We have no friends. Everyone saw what happened tonight. We are ruined. That sounds like a personal problem, Bernice, I said coldly. We are family, she cried. She reached out and tried to grab my hand, but I stepped back. Look at us, Amara. We are your family. Marcus is your husband. I am his mother. Otis is his father. You cannot throw family out on the street. It is not Christian. It is not right. I looked down at her. I looked at the woman who had made my life a misery for 3 years. I looked at the woman who had mocked my infertility, who had belittled my work, who had tried to turn my husband against me. Family, I repeated. Yes, family, Bernice sobbed. We share blood. Well, Marcus does. And by marriage we are one. You have to have mercy, Amara. You have to find it in your heart. We can change. I will treat you better. I promise. I will set a place for you at the head of the table. I will tell everyone how successful you are. Just let us stay. Please. I felt a surge of memory. I remembered the heat of the wine hitting my face. I remembered the sting of the liquid in my eyes. I remembered the sound of her laughter. I remembered the words she had used. I leaned down. I got right in her face so she could see the lack of forgiveness in my eyes. You called me a pig, Bernice, I whispered. Do you remember that? You said I was a filthy pig. Bernice sobbed louder. I was angry. I did not mean it. You meant it, I said. You meant every word. You thought I was an animal. You thought I was beneath you. I straightened up and looked at Sterling, then at the sheriff. And here's the thing about pigs. Bernice, I said, my voice hard as granite. Pigs do not have family. Bernice gasped. Her eyes went wide. Pigs live in a sty, I continued. And they know when they are not wanted. You made it very clear that I was not wanted here. You made it very clear that I was not family. You cannot have it both ways, Bernice. You cannot treat me like an animal when I am down, and then claim me as family when I am up. I turned to Marcus, who was watching from the corner, his face a mask of misery. And you, I said. You stood there and let her say it. You let her call your wife a pig. You are not family either, Marcus. You are just a man who lost his job and his house in the same night. I turned to the sheriff. Sheriff Patterson, I said, I want my property vacated. Now. The sheriff stepped forward. He hooked his thumbs in his belt and looked down at Bernice. You heard the lady, he said, his voice booming in the room. The writ of possession is active. You are trespassing. Bernice scrambled to her feet. But my things, she screamed. My clothes, my jewelry, my antiques. This furniture has been in my family for generations. Sterling consulted the document. According to the foreclosure terms, Mr. Sterling said calmly, all fixtures, furniture, and appliances remaining on the premises after the default date are considered abandoned property. They now belong to AMR Holdings. What? Bernice shrieked. That is theft. You are stealing my life. I am liquidating assets, I corrected. I am going to sell it all, Bernice. The furniture, the art, the silver. I am going to sell it to pay off the debts you ran up. I am going to sell it to pay back the church money Brittany stole. I am going to sell it to pay back the company money Marcus stole. I looked around the room. Grazie. Everything here was bought with lies, I said. It is time to clear the air. Otis stepped forward. He put a hand on Bernice's shoulder. Bernice, he said, his voice tired and resigned. It is over. Let it go. No, Bernice screamed, pushing him away. I will not go. I will not leave my house. Sheriff Patterson looked at his watch. He tapped the face of it with a thick finger. I am going to give you a courtesy, Ma, he said, because of your age and the late hour. He looked at me for confirmation. I nodded. You have 15 minutes, the sheriff said. 15 minutes, Bernice gasped. To pack a lifetime. You have 15 minutes to pack what you need for tonight, the sheriff clarified. A bag, some toiletries, a change of clothes, anything you can carry in your hands. Everything else stays. But where will we go? Bernice wailed. That is not my concern, the sheriff said. But if you are not off this property in 15 minutes, my deputies will escort you off. And if you resist, you will join your son and daughter-in-law in the county lockup for criminal trespass. Bernice looked at me one last time. She looked for a crack in the armor. She looked for the soft girl she used to bully. But that girl was gone. You are heartless, she whispered. I learned from the best, Bernice, I said. I turned my back on her. Sterling, start the timer, I said. I walked over to the window and looked out at the darkness. Behind me, I heard the chaotic sounds of a dynasty collapsing. I heard Bernice running up the stairs sobbing. I heard Otis opening drawers. I heard Marcus cursing under his breath. They were scrambling like rats on a sinking ship, and I was the captain who had opened the Seacocks. 15 minutes. It was not enough time to pack a life, but it was plenty of time to end one. I watched the reflection of the room in the dark glass. I saw them running. I saw them panicking. And for the first time all night, I felt a true sense of peace. The house was mine, the night was mine, and the future was finally wide open. The 15 minutes given by the sheriff passed in a blur of chaotic desperation. It was a spectacle of greed and panic that I would never forget. The Hendersons were not packing for a trip, they were scavenging the wreckage of their own lives. They ran from room to room, grabbing armfuls of clothes, designer shoes, and expensive toiletries, stuffing them into garbage bags provided by the deputies. The Louis Vuitton luggage was left behind, deemed property of the estate they had forfeited. It was a poetic justice to watch them shove Gucci loafers into black plastic sacks, usually reserved for yard waste. I stood by the fireplace watching them scurry. I felt like a ghost haunting my own house, witnessing the dismantling of a dynasty that never really existed. Otis moved slowly, defeated, packing only his essentials. He seemed to understand the finality of this moment. But Bernice and Marcus were different. They were frantic. They were trying to loot the ship before it sank completely. Bernice was in the dining room, hovering over the sideboard. She was moving with a suspicious speed, wrapping items in linen napkins and shoving them deep into her oversized tote bag. She kept glancing over her shoulder, checking to see if the deputies were watching. She looked like a shoplifter in a high-end department store, nervous and guilty. I signaled to Deputy Miller, a young officer with a stern face. He nodded and moved toward her. I walked over to join him. Bernice froze as we approached. She clutched her bag to her chest, her knuckles white. Is there a problem, Bernice? I asked, my voice cutting through the sound of zippers and rustling plastic. No problem, she said quickly, her voice high and tight. Just packing my personal effects, my jewelry, my medication. Things I need. Deputy Miller stepped forward. I need to check that bag, ma'am, he said. We need to ensure that no assets belonging to the property owner are being removed. Bernice recoiled. You cannot search my purse, she indignantly sputtered. That is private. That is a violation of my rights. You are being evicted from a foreclosed property. Ma'am, the deputy said patiently. Anything not personal, clothing or toiletries is subject to inspection. Open the bag. She hesitated, her eyes darting between the door and the bag. Open it, Bernice, I said. Or do you want us to add theft to the list of tonight's charges? With a huff of petulance, she unzipped the tote. At first glance, it looked like scarves and a makeup bag. But the bag was heavy. Too heavy for silk and lipstick. Dump it, I said. Bernice gasped. I will not. Deputy Miller reached out and took the bag from her hands. He turned it upside down over the dining table. The sound was a cacophony of metal on wood. It was not makeup. It was not medication. Out tumbled the antique sterling silver service set. Heavy forks, spoons, and knives clattered onto the table. Then came the silver candlesticks. And then, hidden inside a rolled-up cashmere sweater, something else fell out. It was the jewelry box. The small velvet box that held the loose pearls and the gold clasp from Big Mama's necklace, the pieces Sterling had collected from the floor just moments ago. The room went silent. I reached out and picked up the velvet box. I opened it. The gold filigree stared back at me. "You tried to steal it again," I said, my voice filled with disbelief. "After everything. After Brittany was arrested. After you were told to leave. You tried to steal Big Mama's necklace again." "It is mine!" Bernice shrieked, lunging for the box. The deputy caught her arm, holding her back. "It belongs to the family. It belongs to me. You have no right to it. It belongs to the owner of the house," I said, snapping the box shut. "And since you defaulted on the mortgage, and since you stole the equity, and since you tried to smuggle it out in a gym bag, I think it is safe to say it does not belong to you." "And the silver?" I asked, pointing to the pile of utensils. "Did you think you would need fish forks at the Motel 6? "These are heirlooms," she sobbed. "They have been in the family for 4 generations. And you lost them in 4 years," I said. "You sold your history to buy an image, Bernice. These assets are collateral. They stay with the house." I looked at the deputy. "Seize the bag," I said, "and check Marcus. If she is stealing silver, he is probably stealing electronics." Bernice wailed as the deputy gathered the silver. She looked at the empty table as if she had lost a child. She had valued these objects more than she had valued her own integrity, more than she had valued me. Across the room, Marcus was being patted down by another officer. They found 3 watches in his pockets, watches he had bought with the company credit card. They placed them on the table next to the silver. "This is harassment," Marcus shouted. "Those are my watches. I bought them." "You bought them with my money, Marcus," I said, walking over to him. "That makes them company property." The sheriff checked his watch. "Time is up, folks," he announced. "Grab your bags. You are leaving. Now." The deputies began to herd them toward the front door. Otis walked with his head down, carrying a single duffel bag. Bernice was practically dragged, still crying about her silver. But Marcus stopped. He dug his heels into the marble floor of the foyer. "Wait," he said. "Wait." He turned to me. His eyes were desperate, pleading. He looked at the luxury around him, the life he was losing, and then he looked at me. "Amara, please," he said, his voice cracking. "We can fix this. I know I messed up. I know I lied. But we are married. We have a prenup, remember?" I laughed. It was a tired sound. "Yes, Marcus," I said. "I remember the prenup. You insisted on it. You were so worried that I was after your family money. You made me sign it the week before the wedding. You thought you were protecting your inheritance. I was protecting us," he lied. "But it works both ways, Amara. It protects me too. It says we split marital assets. It says I get support. You cannot just throw me out with nothing. I have rights. I have a claim on your company if it grew during the marriage." I shook my head, marveling at his ignorance. "You really never read anything, do you, Marcus?" I asked. I signaled Sterling. He reached into his briefcase one last time. He pulled out a copy of the prenuptial agreement. "Show him Clause 17, Sterling," I said. Sterling flipped to the back of the document. He held it up for Marcus to see. "The infidelity clause, Marcus," I said. "Do you remember that one?" "Probably not. Your mother's lawyer drafted it. She wanted to make sure that if I ever cheated on her precious son, I would be left with nothing. She wanted to punish me in advance for a crime I never committed." I stepped closer to him. "But the clause is reciprocal, Marcus. It applies to both parties. If either spouse admits to or is proven to have committed adultery during the marriage, that spouse forfeits all claims to marital assets, alimony, and support. They leave the marriage with only what they brought into it." Marcus stared at the paper. He squinted at the fine print. "But you have to prove it," he stammered. "You have to go to court. It takes months. I do not have to prove anything I said. You just proved it for me. I pointed to the library alcove. You just confessed Marcus. In front of me. And more importantly, in front of my lawyer, who is an officer of the court. You told me about Ashley. You told me how long it had been going on. You told me why you did it. Marcus turned pale. I was just talking. It was heat of the moment. I did not mean it. Sterling stepped forward. I am afraid it is admissible, Mr. Vance. And we also have the text messages from your company phone, which is company property, and the hotel receipts charged to the company card. The evidence is overwhelming. I looked at Marcus. I saw the realization sink in. He had built his own trap. He had insisted on the prenup to hurt me, and now it was the very thing that was stripping him bare. You get nothing, Marcus, I said. You leave with your clothes and your mistakes. That is it. But I have nowhere to go, he whispered. I have no money. I have no job. You should have thought about that before you slept with Ashley, I said. You should have thought about that before you stole from me. I gestured to the door. Get out, Marcus. The sheriff put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Let's go, son. Don't make us carry you. Marcus looked at me one last time. He looked for the wife who used to make him breakfast. He looked for the woman who used to rub his back when he was stressed. But she wasn't there. Only the chairwoman remained. He turned and walked out the door, his shoulders slumped, his spirit broken. I followed them. I wanted to see it finished. We walked out onto the porch. The night air was freezing. The wind whipped through the columns, biting at their exposed skin. They huddled together on the driveway, shivering in their thin evening clothes. Bernice, Marcus, and Otis. 3 people who had had everything and thrown it all away for the sake of appearances. The deputies placed their few trash bags of clothes on the pavement next to them. The sheriff turned to me. The property is cleared, ma'am. We will post a deputy at the gate for the night to ensure they do not return. Thank you, Sheriff, I said. I looked at them standing there in the cold. Bernice was still crying softly. Otis was staring at the ground. Marcus was looking at the house like Adam looking back at Eden. This is cruel, Bernice whispered, her teeth chattering. To leave us out in the cold. It is justice, Bernice, I said. You wanted me to feel the cold. You wanted me to feel small. Now you know what it feels like. I reached for the handle of the massive oak front door. I hope you find what you are looking for, I said. But you will not find it here. I stepped back inside. Amara, wait! Marcus called out. Amara, please! I did not wait. I did not hesitate. I grabbed the heavy door and swung it shut. The sound was final. A thunderclap of wood and steel that severed the past from the future. The lock clicked into place. I stood there in the foyer for a moment, listening. I could hear the wind outside. I could hear the faint sound of their voices arguing in the driveway, and then I heard the sound of footsteps walking away down the long gravel drive. They were gone. I turned around and looked at my house. It was quiet. It was empty. The wine stain was still on the rug. The shattered glass was still on the floor, but the toxicity was gone. The air felt lighter. Sterling was standing by the dining room table packing his briefcase. Will there be anything else, Madam Chairwoman? He asked. No, Sterling, I said. You have done enough. Go home. Send the bill to my office. He nodded and let himself out the side door. I was alone. I walked through the empty rooms. I touched the walls. I claimed the space. This was not the Hendersons' house anymore. It was mine. I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of the expensive wine down the sink. I watched the red liquid swirl away, taking the last of their pretenses with it. I did not need their wine. I did not need their approval, and I certainly did not need their name. I was Amara Reynolds, and I was just getting started. The heavy oak door was shut, and the lock was turned, and for the first time in 3 years, the silence in the house did not feel oppressive. It felt like oxygen. I stood in the center of the foyer under the crystal chandelier that Bernice had claimed was imported from France, but was actually from a high-end catalog in Ohio. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I expected to smell the lingering scent of Bernice's heavy perfume, or the stale odor of Marcus's cigars, but all I could smell was the clean, crisp scent of the night air that had rushed in when they left. The house was purged. I walked slowly through the ground floor. My heels made a soft clicking sound on the marble echoing in the empty space. I walked into the dining room. The table was still a disaster zone. The silver was gone seized by the deputies, but the plates were still there with half-eaten lamb and congealed gravy. The wine stain on the Persian rug was drying into a dark, ugly bruise. I looked at it, and I did not feel anger anymore. I felt nothing. It was just a stain on a rug I owned in a house I was going to sell. It was a depreciation of an asset, nothing more, thing. I walked into the kitchen. It was vast and cold. This was the room where I had cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 12 people by myself while Bernice critiqued my seasoning. This was the room where I had washed dishes until my hands were raw while Marcus played video games in the den. I ran my hand along the granite countertop. It felt cool and smooth. It was just a kitchen. It wasn't a prison anymore. I realized then that I wasn't sad. I thought I would be. I thought I would mourn the marriage or the time I had wasted. But you do not mourn a tumor when it is cut out of you. You just feel the relief of the pain stopping. You feel the lightness of being whole again. I felt light. I felt like I could float up to the ceiling. The weight of their expectations, the weight of their insults, the weight of hiding who I was, it was all gone. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. The screen was bright in the dim room. I had dozens of missed calls from Marcus. I had a text from Brittany that just said, "I hate you." I deleted them all without reading them. I blocked their numbers one by one. Delete, block, delete, block. It was a digital cleansing to match the physical one. There was one number I wanted to call. One number I had not dialed enough in the last 3 years because Bernice always made a face when I talked to my family. She thought her family was royalty, and mine was common. She didn't know that my father was the one who taught me how to read a balance sheet when I was 6. She didn't know he was the one who loaned me the first $10,000 to start AMR Logistics and told me to pay him back with interest because respect is earned, not given. I dialed the number. It rang twice. "Hello?" The voice was deep and warm, like old leather and pipe tobacco. It was the voice of a man who knew exactly who he was and didn't need to shout to prove it. "Hi, Daddy," I said. "Amara," his voice changed, instantly softening with affection. "Baby girl, is everything okay?" "It is late. Everything is fine, Daddy," I said. "Better than fine. I just wanted to hear your voice." "You sound tired," he said. "You sound like you have been fighting a war." I said. "But I won. The war is over, Daddy. I evicted them." There was a pause on the other end. A thoughtful silence. "You evicted the tenants in the Buckhead property?" he asked. "I evicted the tenants in my life," I said. "Marcus, Bernice, all of them. They are gone." I heard him let out a long breath. It sounded like relief. "Thank God," he said quietly. "I have been praying for this day, Amara. I never liked how that boy looked at you. He looked at you like you were a wallet, not a woman. I did not want to say anything because you have to make your own mistakes. But I am glad you woke up." "I woke up," I said, "and I am coming home." "Home?" he asked. "You mean the penthouse?" "No," I said. "I mean home. I want to come see you. I want to sit on the porch and drink coffee and listen to your jazz records. I want to be around people who love me without conditions. I want to be around people who know my name is Amara, not ATM." He laughed, a rich, booming sound that warmed me from miles away. "The porch is ready, baby girl," he said. "And your room is just how you left it. When are you coming?" "Right now," I said. "I am leaving this house. I am never sleeping here again." "Good," he said. "Leave the keys on the counter. That place never suited you anyway. It was too cold. You need warmth, Amara. You are a creature of the sun. I am bringing wine, I said. Real wine, not the vinegar Bernice drinks. I saved a bottle of the 1982 Petrus for a special occasion. I think this counts. This definitely counts, he said. Drive safe, baby girl. I will leave the light on for you. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Amara. Come home. I hung up the phone. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of gratitude. I had spent so much time trying to buy the love of people who hated me that I had almost forgotten the people who loved me for free. I had almost forgotten that love isn't a transaction. It is not something you negotiate. It is just there, steady and true. I walked back to the foyer. I looked at the grand staircase one last time. I looked at the portraits on the wall. I didn't take them down. I left them there. Let the bank deal with them. Let the auction house deal with them. They were just inventory now. I opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch. The air was cold, but it felt bracing. It felt clean. The police cars were gone. The driveway was empty. The silence of the night was absolute. A long, sleek black car was idling at the bottom of the steps. It wasn't my delivery van. It wasn't the sensible sedan I used to drive to keep up the ruse. It was my car. The one Sterling had brought for me. A Phantom. Solid black with tinted windows and an engine that purred like a jungle cat. The driver, a man named Thomas, who had been with my company for 5 years, stepped out and opened the back door. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. "Ready to go, Madam Chairwoman?" Thomas asked. I looked back at the house one last time. It loomed dark and imposing against the night sky. It looked like a mausoleum, a monument to a dead marriage and a dead dream. I turned away. I didn't lock the door. It didn't matter who got in. There was nothing left in there that I cared about. "Yes, Thomas," I said, stepping into the warmth of the car's interior. "I am ready. Take me to my father's house." The door closed with a solid, reassuring thud, sealing me inside the leather and walnut cocoon. The world outside was muffled. The noise of the drama, the screaming of Bernice, the pleading of Marcus, it was all gone. There was just the soft hum of the engine and the smell of fresh leather. Thomas pulled away from the curb. We glided down the long driveway, past the imported cypress trees, past the iron gates. I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. It grew smaller and smaller until it was just a speck of light in the darkness, and then it was gone. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion settle into my bones, but it was a good exhaustion. It was the exhaustion of a runner who has just crossed the finish line. I had run the race. I had jumped the hurdles. And I had won. I reached down and touched the hem of my dress. The silk was still stiff with dried wine. I would throw this dress away. I would burn it. I would buy a new one. I would buy 1,000 new ones. I would wear whatever I wanted. I would drive whatever I wanted. I would be whoever I wanted. I was Amara Reynolds. I was a CEO. I was a daughter. I was a woman who had walked through fire and come out made of steel. I thought about the look on Marcus's face when I fired him. I thought about the look on Bernice's face when she saw the deed. I thought about Brittany in handcuffs. And for the first time all night, I allowed myself a real smile. Not a polite smile. Not a fake smile. A smile of pure, unadulterated victory. They had tried to bury me. They didn't know I was a seed. The car turned onto the highway, picking up speed. The city lights of Atlanta spread out before me, a carpet of diamonds on black velvet. It was beautiful. It was mine. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the air-conditioned air. It tasted like freedom. I opened my eyes and watched the city fly by. I wasn't looking back anymore. I was only looking forward. And the view from the back of the Phantom was spectacular. My worth was not a number on a bank statement. My worth was not a title on a business card. My worth was in the fact that I had stood up. I had spoken my truth, and I had walked away. The wine would wash off. The memories would fade. But the strength I found tonight that would last forever. I was done being the victim. I was the architect of my own life now, and I had some renovations to make. Amara's journey teaches us a powerful truth: your value is never determined by someone else's inability to see it. For years, she dimmed her light to fit into their shadow, hoping for acceptance that would never come. But the moment she stood up, she realized that family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual respect. Walking away wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of necessary self-love. True power isn't about proving them wrong. It's realizing you no longer need to prove anything at all. You are the architect of your own life. If you've ever had to cut off toxic family members to save your own peace, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice and